Welcome to another episode of Conversations with an Investor. In this week's episode, we've got Grant Sampson and Reece Strathern from the Oxygen Experience. We are going to dive into a roller coaster ride, how a boring joiner, by his own words, who had a boom and bust business that decided that he'd had enough of the stress and decided in a torrential day to run into the freezing cold water on a beach, to Reece's highs and lows, to the high volatility, his childhood, all the way through into his adult life, where he seen the extreme events unfold and how he found breathwork, how a chance encounter had brought the two together. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'd like to go back to how it all began. So how did you two get together and how did you end up finding this thing called Oxygen Experience? Where did it all start?
Well, personally for me, it started about 3 years ago, around about COVID. I was in a difficult business. It was construction based and property. As I went into COVID, the whole world come crumbling down, as we all know, but COVID was actually the opposite for us. We actually grew pretty much overnight because there was that much work coming in. We needed more people. But then on the back end of that, the back end of that year, we were planning for 2020. We booked in and contracted over £1 million worth of work, which was a first for the business. But as we went into 2020, the material costs, the labour costs rose, the material costs went up, but the contracts all stayed the same. So the business started to fail that year. As we went into, I think it was April in 2020, we hit with a scam, which was basically somebody sent with a false email trying to be Microsoft. Once we I logged into that unknown it wasn't a Microsoft, put my password in, they got access to the whole email system. So what they were doing was, it was quite elaborate actually. So they were sitting watching the emails going back and forth. Then when they spotted their chance to send emails from my email address to the girl in the department that paid the bills, sending false invoices, asking her, can you pay this bill? Can you pay that bill? She did her due diligence, apart from checking with me, she checked VAT numbers, she checked the name of the businesses, they were all legit, paid the bills, but they were just small like £1,500, £2,000, quite unnoticeable when a business is turning over so much money every month. So I did notice a few, and I questioned her. When I emailed her, they deleted the emails. So she was never seen my email asking, what is this bill? So they must have then figured out that I'm starting to look into this. And then it was one Friday, there was a large payment to be made to a supplier. And I asked her, have you made that payment? And she says she couldn't. And I said, why? And she says, because I paid that bill you told me yesterday, 15 grand. And I'm like, 15 grand? I never told you to pay any bill. So she then went on and said, you're fucking joking me. I've did this a few times. So I was like, let me see. So she showed me the emails and the bills. So she was getting emails from me and I'm like, I've never sent them. And they were all paying these bills. So she paid it, we tallied it up over a space of 3 weeks. It was like 40k. And that kind of was the start of the business, because we started the failure of the business because we were having to pump money in every month. And we just couldn't recuperate because of the cost of the contracts were staying. The contracts were what they were, but the material costs and the labour costs were going up. That was just too much. And it was already a stressful business. And it kind of tipping me closer and closer to the edge. So that was like probably a year after we went into lockdown. But during lockdown, the stress of that business already was there. I started doing cold water, breath work. First off was the cold water. I headed out one day with my daughter. We're walking along the beach and it was like a torrential rain. We're just getting our hoods up and I was like, I'm going to jump in the water and see what like. So
right, that's not normal.
I know, man.
So how do you... I don't think that happens to most people, although I can relate to it because
you can relate now.
I've had that thought and I've thought, that's a bit bonkers. I've had the internal dialogue with myself and I'm like, Gio, you lost your mind.
You know what, man?
So you're walking along, like, give us a bit like an idea before you get, keep that in mind, the beach. You're at the beach, torrential rain, right? So is your life up until then, you're just
stressed? Joe
Blow, normal.
It's just normal, man. I've never, at that point in my life, I had never done anything which would be classed as spiritual. I had never done any breath work. I'd never thought about going in the cold water, not once. I don't know. I think they say you Steve Jobs says you can connect the dots looking back. I've always said that I always get what I want in life. And at that time in my life, there was things that I didn't want. So I was wanting out of the business. I was wanting like out of a difficult situation in my personal life. And I don't know, it was like, it must have just been a download or a click, because certain other things happened in my life that are like just came from nowhere. Going into the water that day, I've always said it changed my life for the better.
So, like, what's your story before the business? Like, how did you end up getting involved in the business?
So, well, I was a joiner to trade right out of school.
Like, see, young guy,
Yeah.
like young guy, you've not done any breath work or decided to take a
nothing
run
like
into
it, man.
the freezing water. Like, you go, you're an apprentice, become a joiner. Like, is there anything notable in there where you have had any of these sort of like rather bonkers thoughts?
Nah, man, my life was just boring. I would say it was just a boring, like, just everyday life where you just plod along. You're in a system that you just believe you're meant to get up in the morning, go out and do an 8 to 4:30 it is in the trade.
Yeah,
you just got to get up, and that's the way of the life. And then I'd always been ambitious. I'd always questioned things, thinking like, this can't be life. This can't be it. Like, even when I had the business, I wanted it to be the biggest joinery firm there was. I wanted it to be the biggest property company there was. But I put so many other things. I put money in front of a lot of that. So the reason I wanted it to be big.
when you say you put money in front of a lot of it, what do you mean?
In front of like satisfaction. So the money was what I thought would bring me happiness.
Right.
I thought having a successful business.
So money's your measure rather than anything
Yes,
else. You're
at that
using
time.
money as the yardstick to how you
Definitely,
measure
yeah.
if it's going well or not.
Yeah.
And everything else was
Sticking to it, man. Yeah, I always believed, when I buy a house, I'll be happy. When I get that car, I'll be happy. And you ultimately are never happy, because you achieve these goals. They're not easy to achieve, but if you're dedicated and you work hard, you can get to them. But then you're not happy. So then you set another goal, which is again based around financial gain, and it's never going to make you happy.
Right, so you're you set up the joinery business. You're motivated by money. It's the proverbial, carrot on the stick, and you're the donkey just plodding further and further and further down this path. You get involved with property and construction as your business.
Yep.
This scam happens, and then the stress gets too much, and you're walking along the beach with your daughter. What's she saying at this point? Like, when you're going, I'm going to...
she's thinking I'm fucking nuts.
Like, how nuts? What was the expression on her face?
Well, I'm like, fucking video me, darling. Get me in a video. I'm in the like. She actually did come in as well, so she came in as well.
He's thrown her under the bus now.
No, so she's just as nuts as me, but she was only like 8 or something at the time.
Right.
So it's a bit easier for an 8-year-old to get in the cold water, but she thinks it's fun. You know what I mean? Walking along the beach in the piss and rain, sand's soaking wet. It's not the same as it is a sunny day, but I don't know what, man. There was just, as I say, looking back, connecting the dots. I believe it's the universe was giving me an out of my life at that current time.
And was it were you aware of it at that point in time that you wanted out, or was it sort of looking
100%,
back?
100%, man. So I had the business for just under 10 years before it went bust. For the last 4 years, I was always trying to get away. Trying to bring other people in to run the business. I didn't want it. I hated construction. I hated joinery. I was the difficulty is I was good at that, but I didn't like it. So because I was good at it, I made a good living at it, but I never ever wanted to do that for the rest of my life. So for 4 years of the 9 that it was there, I was always trying to get away from it. That's why I ended up with the property business, because I thought again that, if I'm buying property, that construction business can do the work on it, which would allow me to move on, and that would just give me another out. So I was for years looking for an out, and I believe that was my out from the universe, unbeknown to me at the time. Going into the cold water set my life on a completely different trajectory. It's almost like a sliding doors moment. If I never went in the cold that day, I would never have felt that relief. I never have felt like you go in when the water is so cold, your problems dissolve. They're gone.
So there's business people out there, and there's property guys out there, and they might be listening just now, because maybe they've had an experience of, what's the point in all this? This is some stress. I hope they're not paused this and ran into the nearest the nearest seawater because it's fairly warm at the minute. I don't know if they're going to get the same bang for their buck.
Well, so there you go. So, like in Scotland, we're pretty much all right all year round. So the recommended degrees is 14 degrees and below.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's pretty much like that all year round in Scotland, especially any loch will be like 14 less.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the rivers and seas will be around that.
What beach are we on?
The River Tay, Broughty Ferry Beach.
Right. Yep. Nice part of the world.
Yeah.
Nice spot.
Not that day.
So let me hear about your daughter. Your daughter's there. She's 8. Right. You've had this sort of just wacky idea. It's pouring rain, and I'm going to go in that water. Have you seen anything like any videos about cold water or anything like that? How's this came on your radar? Or is it literally boom right in?
At the time, so when like summertime 2019, there was probably bits of Wim Hof going about, maybe social media, but no, I'd never looked into it. I had never thought like I'm going to try that. And funnily enough, like after I did it, I'd mentioned it to a couple of friends, and one of my friends had said, "Oh, I've been reading up about this guy Wim Hof." So he was already be looking into it, and then we kind of got together because he was going through a difficult situation in his life. His wife had cancer, so we kind of got together and we were doing it regular together, and it was helping him. And he had a different situation in his life, and it was amazing that like we never like thought we would do something so fucked up at that time, but it was helping both in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we had different situations, but it was helping us.
So, like for instance, is every property guy or businessman out there or women that are feeling particularly stressed, would you recommend it, and are they instantly going to go and just throw the business down the toilet?
Ah, man, I think they will. Yeah, well, depending on what the situation of the business is. So what I found with the cold water was that, you know, I wasn't instantly. That was 2019. The business never went down until like mid 21. Yeah. So the cold water helped me build resilience. It helped me build resilience in areas of my life that I was taking easy decisions. And when I was taking these decisions that were easy, my life was invariably difficult. So
what do you mean when it gave you resilience? How did that manifest itself? Like what are you seeing?
So
what's
the
mindset,
change are
you getting from that?
The mindset to get up, I was getting up at 4:30 every morning and driving to the River Tay or to a hill in the middle of winter. We were walking over the sand when it was almost frozen, and it was actually warmer in the water than it was outside.
Yeah.
So that grows your mindset, that grows your mentality, your strength, your resilience, because without taking those decisions to get out of my bed and go, again, it's a difficult decision. The easier one's to stay in bed, which we're not going to do that forever. I'm not saying like, I don't do that every single day now because I've built the resilience. I know, and now I know when I'm taking the easy decisions. Back then, the easy decisions, I was just taking them because I wanted to shy away from the things that were hard.
Like, so for the people that are listening out there that are thinking that they maybe aren't taking the easy decision, because this is what happens with when you speak to anyone, they'll say things like, you know, I don't take the easy decision, or I think I'm fairly resilient, or I think that I'm pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Like what is the sort of signs that you would say, hey, look, you're taking the easy road? Because you mentioned something there when you said, I know when I'm taking the easy decisions, almost like you've got a sort of line that you cross where you go back into that default mode of I'm taking easy choices.
Feelings. It comes back to your feelings. So if you've got a decision to make, you'll know based on your feeling. Is it a gut feeling? The gut feeling is generally the one you want to take. But again, that will be the hard one, I would imagine, because with the difficult decisions, just thinking about it and not listening to your feelings or your gut, well, that's the easy choice.
So give me an example of what that'd be like.
Well, for instance, I've got 2 examples. So I'll go with the business. I'd spent 10 years on that business. I put my whole life into it, my family's time, my kids' time. I had, never seen my kids very often because I was working night and day, 6 days a week. Sunday was the only day that I was shattered. The easy decision was to just keep plodding on because that's what I'd done for 10 years. The difficult decision, which my gut knew, was to close the business down. But the reason that was a difficult decision is because it wasn't just me that was affected. It was my family. It was my house. It was subcontractors. It was friends who were subcontractors who were due payments. It was, I a very difficult decision. And I knew, but my gut decision was that if I don't do this, then the rest of my life could be miserable.
So you're faced with the decision that the tough decision is that you're going to let all these people down.
Yep.
And you feel the weight of responsibility, that tough decision, but that's what your gut instinct's telling you.
Yeah.
And that's at odds with just keep going.
Yeah, I could have kept going. It could have kept going, taking on more debt, paying more of my personal finances into it, which were getting to the point where I didn't have any anyway. Yeah. But it could have been a possibility, just to keep digging through it.
Hey, so you said there that it was 2019 to 2021, so a couple of years in between.
Yeah.
And, the world sort of changed March 20. Quite a tricky time to go through.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people changed. Like, for instance, that era there was a make or break for a lot of people. But it seemed that you had started before then. Like, it wasn't quite at that. It wasn't like, March, April, May 2020. It was, hey, look, this was been before. Yeah. So it sounds like it's not been set off by lockdowns or any of that material change. It's been something that's happened before then.
I think you're right. I think, as I said, I don't think construction was the right place for me. Like, it didn't fulfill me. And because I attached a monetary value to everything that I did, I was never going to be fulfilled, because not enough money would ever make me happy, or not any tangible asset ever would make me happy. I think what my soul or subconscious was looking for was something to fulfill me, a purpose. And as I said to you before, although I was good at what I did, it wasn't a purpose. And I was still searching for a purpose up until I met Reece. The day I met Reece is when I found my purpose, which was years down the line, which was 2022, wasn't it? Yeah, October last year. Yeah. So it's still, I'd got out of the situation, and I'd started to repair my own trauma and healing and things, and I knew I was looking for a purpose. I just never knew what it was until I found breathwork, and probably more so cold water.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. We think for the listeners out there, we've got two gentlemen. You should check them out on YouTube. Quite different in personality, quite different in appearance, and they seem to have found themselves, and not necessarily they were on the same path lining up. Maybe getting that wrong, maybe speaking out of turn. But it seems like their paths crossed from very different directions.
Yeah.
So what about you, Reece? What's your story? How far back we got? How can we go?
Where do we start? That's what I was just thinking there when we were kind of having a chat there. It's like Grant's talking about a kind of construction background, and when you talk about like lining the dots up, is for me, when I look back at lining the dots up, the people I've met on that journey, and it wasn't until maybe the last 4 years, I would say, kind of just before that lockdown period, there was like wee things I was dipping in where I started seeing like this universe stuff. People would always say I'm kind of weird or I'm different or I kind of stand out for the crowd, and that was kind of always me as a person. I always used to dress different. I just felt like sometimes I just never fitted in with society, and that was for a very young age. Remember growing up as a wee kid, and I remember that when people say they try and take you back to this inner child, I could never remember a lot, because a lot of the stuff I actually went through, like traumatic experiences. I learned to block and black a lot of stuff.
Is this when you were younger?
Yeah, but there was I remember
how young were you?
I looked like the Milky Bar kid, so I was probably back about maybe 5, and I just remember like my auntie Leslie Ann, like she would always say like she loved me, but I was like this wee devil child. But although the family loved me, but I had this like bit of kind of this edge about me. I questioned everybody, and I just remember like there's a clear image of me like just dotting about when you're this wee kid. You've got no worries. You're just in this big world. You're like, what the fuck is this place?
Yeah.
And I remember just growing up, I'd look at elders, and I'd always remember people saying like, you need to listen to your elders. They can better, blah, blah, blah. And I would always be like, I'd question, I'd always say this thing, says who? I would always keep saying this to everybody, like, says who are you to tell me? And they would always say like, you're so cheeky. And I'm like, but I just had this question to me, like, who are you to define who I am? Like if it's just
How long ago? Like how far back can you remember that? I mean, is it because it's usually represents itself as you've been asked to do something you don't want to do, so you rebel.
yeah.
So you have that. It's not necessarily always a case that hey, you came out of the womb and this is the way you were.
Yeah, of
It was
course.
more a case of like something happened and then
Yeah.
you ended up going. I don't think so. I don't think I agree with that. And sometimes it can be hey, you shouldn't do this. Maybe you're like, well, that's what I want to do. It could be a number of different things.
Good example is, there's probably more funny about, it's probably not even nothing to do with the actual journey, but man, it would take me, we'd always love to go up the Kingsgate shop in a wee place in Dunfermline, and I'd been doing this on numerous occasions. She just didn't realise, and I was stashing them at back of my nana's, but she used to take me into Argos, but it used to be like these glass canisters on the table with all the jewellery in it. But they used to have the backs open, and I used to go wandering and like in escape and do my evening hang. I'm like in this big world, like, oh, what's all this gold stuff? And we're walking along, and I'm like, hey, Auntie Nikki, look. And she's like, oh my God, what you done? I've got about 10 rings on each finger, like, hey. I've just been kind of half-inching all the jewellery for Argos.
What age are you?
He's about 5'6", like.
Well, you were thug life back at 5 or 6.
Aye, so pretty much it's been, I was like, I wonder what I was on a past life, like maybe a wee thief or something like that, a wee pirate. Or but I just had this something about me where nothing made sense to me that you were doing anything wrong. But if someone was to say, like, you can't do that, I would always be like, how can I not do that? Like, why? What's a rule? Like, a rule never made sense to me growing up. And so I would keep questioning everybody, teachers, parents, like, who's my parent to tell me what to do? Like, and I would always say to my mum growing up as I was getting a bit older, like, you can't tell me what to do. And she was like, oh, I'll tell you what you can do. And she's like, I'm your mum and you'll listen to your mum. And I'd be like, no, I'll do what I want. And I just always had this kind of, not in an ego way, it was just this kind of like, I was true to my word, and I always grew up like that. I'd always do what I want. I never worried about like that other side of life that I feel people are like really conditioned into.
So what's it like growing up? Like when you're like, so 5 is young.
Aye.
And it sounds like you're not over enamored with the confines of society.
Yeah.
And your moral compass is not where everybody else is, because you quite like these gold rings and jewellery, and you'll take them if you can find them. So what's it like when you're growing up? You're going, because the thing with society, if you don't feel like you're going to conform to the norm, the norm, so to speak, is that you have this sort of idea that you don't fit. So is that the sort of thing that you're going through when you're going through your school years? Because that's where you're sort of trying to figure out who you are.
For sure. So we'll come back on that. The quick bit I found out about, like, I started to look into like trauma before actual then realising like we didn't need to look into trauma, but there's always this thing that's missing in everybody growing up, right? When we start in the womb, we're almost this oneness with your mother. Like, you are your mother essentially. You didn't have any difference. Like, you can hear external noises or like the talking between two parents, but you don't know that's actual language. You just hear tonalities. When you separate for the womb, and when you start to get your sight and you're seeing from a baby, when it starts to see that blurry vision, it's that moment when a baby then starts to realise, like, oh, it's not just oneness now, there's a bit of separation, there's me and then there's my mother now. So when you get that separation and start realising that there's others around you, like other people, your mother, there's you, there's separation, that's when you go on that journey, I think, is like, all right, what's this world? Where the fuck am I? And it's like, I think from a young age, I was kind of like walking around like, man, what the fuck is this place? Like, and that's why I kept questioning everybody. But growing up, I found it really tough. I think I'll kind of run through. It's like, where do you start? So as I was growing up, I started putting weight on. My mum probably chose the best name for me, which was, I got bullied for years, Reece Obese. How good is that? It's like the perfect name. Fill me up for biscuits.
I think before we get there, we need to establish how much of the food was paid for and how much of the food that you'd pinched.
Good question.
Was this being entirely funded, or was it just was Reece Obese doing
there was a bit of theft in there when my mum was sleeping, probably sneaking down for an extra packet of cheese and onion or the wee animal biscuits.
How big were you?
Everybody used to say that, but looking back, I would say they used to call it puppy fat, right? Or you're big boned, like that kind of. I wasn't merely obese.
They're just being nice to you.
Aye, well, that's probably it. So I was kind of a wee bit heavy. I never really played sports. My dad left me when I was born, so I never really had a father figure growing up.
Right.
And my mum, like, she's never really had an easy life as well. They've had there's like 13 of them as siblings, so quite a big fucking fucked up family, to be fair. as I was growing up, I always used to look at like my family, and there's no disrespect to them, but I just felt like nobody had goals growing up. And like for a young age, there was this desire in me to like, I wanted to not be famous, but I wanted to be like almost like leave something behind that people would recognise or know me for. And I never knew what that was. I never played sport and I never done anything. And I was like what the fuck is that? Like, how can people like me? I'm not a football player. And I remember David Beckham coming on the scene then, and my next door neighbour went, "Oh, here's a book for you if you like reading." I started reading this book. It was about Beckham, how he was in the park with his dad hitting fucking free kicks. I was like, oh, I'll go and do that. The issue was I didn't have a dad to fetch a ball, right? So probably doing half the running back and forth. But that started ultimately getting me fit. And I remember used to kicking a ball in this wee park with the goals over the back of the field.
What age is this at?
That was probably going into like 10, I would say, because I was still at primary school.
Like, you're not, like, I'm thinking you're absolutely massive, like a big rolling unit all the way through to adult life. I mean, so you've actually managed to get on the path a wee bit with the...
Started off a wee bit early, mate,
good.
and then it took me a while, and I looked at my cousin DC. He put on a bit of weight, and I remember him, he played football all the time, and I almost looked up to him, and I almost be like he was my role model growing up, because he was like me almost. He started as a cleaner in Howdens and worked his way up and became really successful, and he moved on, and then he got this nice house and all that, and he moved away for the family, and I kind of looked at him like fair play, but everybody looked at their nose to him, and I'm like, what's this like bitterness to somebody who's done well in life? So I remember he used to wear bin bags under his clothes, and I started doing it, and they're like, oh, you just want to be like DC? And I'm like, well, why not? Like, I thought he was cool at the time, and he had tattoos and everything like that. That's probably where that all started. But I remember starting to lose weight, and I got into this zone where I was like so obsessed with like losing weight. I had no nutritional value or information about what nutrition was. My mum used to fucking give us Spam out of tin, or they Bernard Matthews steak pies, and like it was just pure council dinners. We came for an upbringing where my mum done her best for us, but equally like we didn't really have a lot of wholehearted nutritional food. And that was probably a reason why I probably did put on a bit of weight. Like, it was just, there was never like healthy meals, chicken and rice and all these kind of stuff. Just growing up there, it was just council dinner. So that's all I ever ate. But I started losing this weight, and then I got to a point when I was obsessed looking at calories, looking at food. And I used to think fat was the key factor back then, and I looked at everything with fat. So I'd make sure everything was like fat free. So as I thought that was what was making me fat. Obviously I had no fucking clue. So I got to a point where I got really skinny, and my nana used to be like, look at you, you're needing a good feed. And I was like, oh, well, I'm fat 1 minute, and now you're telling me I need a good feed. So it was like I went through this like extreme to one end of the spectrum to the next.
Pendulum effect, yeah.
Aye, and then I had to go to the doctors, and he says, luckily you come in now, because I probably would have went anorexic, started caving in at my collarbones and everything like that, but I couldn't see it in me. In my head, I was getting skinny, I was getting fit, and I was just getting so obsessed with running about with football. So that became an obsession just growing up into my early teenage years. But equally, I was still getting bullied at school. I always had like a perforated eardrum, and I used to wear like this bit of cotton wool. I had this bad infection in my ear, and I remember having like this super bad earache, and I was crying at this point. My mum would take me to the doctors, they'd give me this cream, they'd give me a spray, and then they'd put me back, and I would keep getting it. And I remember it over summer holidays. I think I was about 12. And I was in agony. I went downstairs and I actually had to lean on the armchair of the couch, and I was fucking screaming. My mum's like, what is it? She's like, I'm going to take you to the hospital. I had a mastroid growing in the back of my ear, which was eating all the bone marrow in the back of my ear.
You had a what?
A mastroid, it's called. It's an infection that was eating into the bone marrow inside of my ear. I had a big lump behind my ear, but obviously the doctors didn't recognise this, they didn't know what it was, and it was working its way to my brain. So they says like, didn't they come in a couple of days there and then, it probably would have got far enough past the bone marrow into my brain. So I was in there for like 6 weeks in hospital, and I remember like fucking petrified of needles, mate. This wee like trainee doctor, oh, I do your needle, and he missed my vein about 8 times. I'm traumatised. Eventually one dude whacks it in, starts doing case studies, and they still can't find out what it was. Obviously I know what it is now, but this went on for like 6 weeks, went through like 2 operations in that space of time. It wasn't
They didn't know what was going on.
No, they just didn't know. They thought it was a perforated eardrum, and then they tried to like fix that. And then it was still there. It was still this infection. The lump was still there. And then another doctor, a specialist, he was from China. He come in and then he found out it was that, and they had to like kind of scrape all this bone away, all the dead bone that had been eaten into that. So that kind of started that for there. Now I always remember being like a bit paranoid after that, because I was so conscious that I wear it, and like sometimes I get infection, and I would never hear, and I would need to wear like, I started growing up and I watched Ronaldinho playing football and he had that wee headband. So I bought the wee headband, but I used to put it in my ear. Because if I ever had like this infection, I was so conscious and I'd get paranoid and I'd get bullied for it. Oh, you wear the cotton wool in your ear. And
So it's like the bullying seems to be a
big factor.
It's really taking its toll on you.
Aye.
Because a lot of people get picked on, and it seems to be, unfortunately part of growing up.
Oh, aye.
But it doesn't affect everybody equally.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of the things. And hey, look, being a difficult upbringing, it sounds like the mum's side of the family. It's a bit of the crabs in the bucket. You don't get above your station. You're not supposed to get that. People like us don't get that.
Exactly.
That mentality is reinforcing you at these formative years, and then you're having this sort of pendulum swing. You're trying to find out who you are.
That's it.
It can be difficult when you're seeing the idea that this is all sort of like it's all building up in the bank of Reece.
Aye.
Do you think that that's something that, looking back, it was quite hard for you to, you were quite sensitive to the bullying?
I think there and then, like, because I was a wee bit heavier, I did used to defend myself. Like, I wasn't scared to defend myself, but it was a particular family growing up. They were the Feenies, they were called. There used to be the wee brother my age and then the bigger brother and the sister. And I remember I got to a point where I probably just built up this rage inside of me, and I remember I just wrecked him one time at the primary school. And then his big brother and his sister, they jumped me after school, and this kept going on every day when I was walking home from school. They were hiding behind the shop. They would chase me all the way back home. Luckily, I was getting a bit thinner. I could start to run a bit faster, so I was getting away from them after so many doings coming home from school. But that was just the norm where we grew up. It was like we were brought into fighting, and it's quite a rough area in Abbeyview and Dunfermline. All the older ones used to call themselves Levy Toy, and they used to go about in the Fight Valley field, and that used to be a thing we'd look up to, all the older ones, thinking like that's a cool thing to do. But again, you're born into that environment, so you essentially become that, and that was kind of what they were brought up around as well. And then I remember getting my buddy in P7, Gavin, and I was like, oh, please be the big dude with the ginger hair. Please be the big dude with the ginger hair. And it was like, everybody got picked, and then I just seen him, and I was like, yes, man. So Rocky was called, and they were known to be, they were hard, man. Like, the Rossies were the three ginger brothers, and every one of them could scrap. Like, even to this day, they probably, like a lot of people probably still know who they are. And I remember him being my buddy, and he was like, don't worry, wee man, nobody will touch you again. And he used to walk me home every night from school, and there was a couple of times he didn't, and they used to follow me. So every time he wasn't there, and then one time he wasn't there, and I defended myself again. It was just this continuous thing. I remember my mum, she's like, I'm fucking sick of this, I'll take you up to that door. And she's then about having a scrap with his mum, and they're like, right, let's do it out, one last fight at the park. And I remember this, I remember it clear as day. We're in this park, it was a new built one in Abbeyview. And they're like, right, you two are going to fight. And then looking back on it, it's like, man, there's this like tailored fight between two wee young lads, man, and that's going to end everything. Between the two mums, they're standing there like, my son's going to bang your son, and it's like, whoever's the hardest, the son here, like, wins everything pretty much. We're in the park, and I remember, like, we're walking up to each other, and I was like, I don't know what to do it. I remember he just hit me a couple of times, I just seen rage. And I remember I leathered him there, and his brother ran there and started, like, laying into me again. And I was like, this is what happens every time. I get the better of him, and then the brothers come in, and I never had brothers, I had a wee brother. So this went on all the time, and then it got better, and then I moved school. I started getting bullied at another school. I had Rockfords, man. I got picked on for my Rockfords. I was like, cheers, mum, fucking hell. Can't even get the real Rockfords. The Rockports, actually, at the time. And I was craving these Rockports all the time, man. Like, I'm walking about with these fucking tinky fake things. So I used to get picked on for them, and then one time, because I just thought, oh, fucking, fuck you, man. Like, who are you to rip my shoes? Wow, and it would all start from there. So I used to...
Is this when you're at high school?
So that was P7 again, it lasted, and then we went to high school. And then the dude who ironically used to bully me, we actually became pals at high school. But I went through this phase of probably still trying to find out who I was. And I look back at it, I seeked a lot of validation growing up because I was bullied, and I didn't get... It's not that my mum didn't love me. My mum probably gave me tough love in terms of... I wasn't planned. My mum was probably still in the party scene. She was young. And then she probably resented me a part of growing up, I think. I don't know if she'll ever speak the truth to that, but there was a part of me, I was always lacking what true love was, or a family, or being around that environment. So I always seeked validation, more from masking, because my dad was he was never there. So I still kind of wanted this masculine role. Even playing football, I used to watch all the guys who were good at football, but their dads there taking them to the football and egging
And
them
like,
on.
did you yearn for this? I mean, like, is this only looking back, or at the time did you go,
Ah.
something's missing?
I think at the time, this is what I say this, and I say it to Paul, who I live with now. I always say, like, the right amount of trauma will give somebody success, but too much of that will crumble somebody. So I believe that we need trauma in our lives, but to a certain degree, certain people will work with that, and it'll kind of drive them. Because it drove me to the point where I wanted to prove people almost, but prove it to myself, not just them. Prove that, like, well, I did come for this environment, but what's that stopping me achieving that?
It sounds like you're, again, I might be picking this up wrong, but it sounds like you outwardly started to try and get validation outwardly, but then realised it was you needing to validate yourself.
That's it.
Because that's the thing, is like, a lot of people might find that a bit sort of, a bit fluffy. And the reality is, see, when you speak to someone, you put them in a situation where they're faced with their mindset dictates the result. Is you have those things, you have the measures of, like, what value do you give yourself? What's your self-confidence? So you can have high self-confidence but low self-value.
That's it.
And this is where you get the disconnect, where you're not quite in harmony. And it sounds like what you've had that, you get the sense that, you don't fit in at school. You're not really sure if you planned. Dad's not about. Getting picked on. There's loads and loads and loads of stuff for you. Like, how difficult is that dealing with because your mindset is that you don't know what you don't know, right? So this is what you grew up around.
Up with that,
so you go, hey, this must be what it is.
Aye. You just accept that for what it is.
I hope Culture Scotland, when they're doing their tourism bit, can explain this. That this is what Scotland's all about.
I know.
Visit Scotland. They come up to Abbey View and check out.
That's your apprenticeship, man. It's like,
you've got this thing now where you must be at odds growing up with this mentality of, I think I can do better.
Aye.
But I don't really feel. I don't have a lot of self-worth. But I've got confidence that I can go out and do something. But I don't really feel that I've been told that people like us don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's all these little kind of, they're all at odds with each other.
Aye.
So how did you deal with that going through like high school?
I think high school was the start of, like, I don't even like that word, awakening. Not at school, because I would never even knew that was what was happening. I reckon high school was the actual moment where I masked everything up. All that shit I was growing up with, I pushed it to the side because I was seeking the validation and I was getting it for these other people I thought was cool. And they were hard men, they were walking about, and it would be us, like, we'd want to fight with the goths and that at school, and that was what it was back then. It was the skaters and the moshers, and it was us, the Neds, with the collars up all the time and the football socks tucked to your trackies, and we didn't wear our uniform and they did, and so it would always be this battle of, like, we seek validation to be like, oh, we're like AV Toy, the older boys, and that's what you looked up to, is like to be validated, right? Because you're getting it for all these other people. But I think the start of it for me was, it goes a little bit deep, like, but I want this to reach people, because I see many kids growing up in environments of schemes or whatever you want to call it, and they probably lack self-confidence because they think that's their life and they can't do better and accept it. And that's where I wanna spark that in somebody, because everybody's got it in them. Everybody's got a power, everybody's got a purpose. And they might not know it at that age, or they're conditioned with their environment as well. But I started growing up with my wee brother's dad, who became a father figure. Mary a father figure than anybody. And I always owe that to him.
What age did he come on the scene?
He was in, so my wee brother, he was 7 years younger than me. So obviously just over 7, kind of going into the ages, until I got that relationship with him, and then we moved into our new house down at Dawn Road. It was becoming a bit better then, and he was always athletic. He played football, and that mate used to play with Hibs when he was younger, and so I kind of looked up to him. I was like, oh, he's good shape, he goes to the gym and all these things, and I was like, that's kind of a father figure I look up to. And I used to love that, and he would treat me like a son and everything like that. And it got to a point, and I started noticing when we were going to school, we got a drug stock, and then they were taking us through all these stages of drugs, and I was like, makes sense now. So there was a period, a couple of months before that drug talk, I would always go up in the morning to get ready at school, and there'd be a gap under the toilet door at the top of the stairs, and I'd be like, fucking bang the door, and he's like, fucking leave me. He was like, I'm doing the toilet, and I was like, it's been like 20 minutes, I'm trying to get ready for school. And I'd be like, hurry up, I need to kind of get in and do the toilet, I'm about to go to school, I'm going to be late. And then there would be a period of silence, and then I would hear things, noises, rustling and all that, and I'd wait at the stairs, and I kept seeing stuff under the stairs, and I couldn't make sense of it, and I'm like, what's going on in there? Still a young boy, I didn't have a clue what the fuck's going on. And this went on for months and months and months, and then I got that drugs talk, and I went, fuck, it clicked. Says the postman at the end, I says, what's that drug there with the tin foil? And he said, that's heroin. He says, why are you asking about that? And I says, oh, it's all right, it's fine. And this went on, and then I was like, I need to see if I can see that tin foil. And I kept seeing the square tin foil, I'd see the needle, and then it would go for periods even longer and longer. I remember one time I was bursting, it was silent, and I fucking booted the door open. And it just knocked off a wee hinge, it was like a wee snib on the door. And he was lying there, needles in the toes, OD'd, foam at the mouth. I'm just a wee young lad, and I was like, what the fuck? And I was like panicking, I was like, I need to phone my mum. My mum wouldn't believe me, she's like, what are you talking about? Then I phoned his dad, and his dad was like fucking bad on him, like he was just one of the tough old cunts for back in the day, just grafted all his days. Just an old man, a lad. He come down and he was like, fucking move out the way, and he fucking ripped him out the toilets. I was trying to slap him about, and I remember him just lying there and there's just foam everywhere. It was traumatising. The ambulance came, tried to tell my mum, and I was like, see, you would never believe me. I was like, I've been trying to tell you for months, and you would never believe me. And she was like, oh, shut up, like just kept pushing me to the side as if, and I'm like, I'm trying to tell my mum this, like, and she won't listen to me. A period of this went on and on again, because he still looked normal, he was still healthy and that, mate. Obviously, you deteriorate over time the longer you take that shit, man. And I would see him, I'd sit in the morning, I'd eat my bowl of Frosties or whatever, and he'd sit there and he'd talk to you, and then you'd see him, he'd be like, and then the Frosties would just fall over him, and he's like, ah. And I'm like, you're a fucking waster, man. Like, what are you doing to yourself? And he's like, who are you talking to? So I went through a period of time where he used to lock me in the house when my mum would go to work. And he would pin me against the window, he'd be in my face, he would hit me, and I went up for a beating of that. And I just used to accept it, and I just had so much anger building in me. Just like you were such a good person, and what the fuck are you doing?
You're talking about him being a good person?
Aye. So he was, mate. He was a good. There wasn't anything bad about him.
So do you think he was doing it all the time?
He went for a period, man, and it got worse and worse. And
I'm saying since he came on the scene with you, was he doing it all the time?
I think he was doing it there. I think the trigger of it was he lost his gran. He was really close to her. Mm-hmm. He was always close to his gran, and his mum then moved to London, and so I think there's a lack of obviously like family and that there as well. So that's obviously triggered something in there in the environment we grew up in. There was periods of people who lived around there who sold all that shit. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name any of them on a live podcast, but we know the people who used to distribute all that stuff around there, and he's obviously been in with that crew. A couple of months down the line again, I found him OD'd the second time. That time I genuinely didn't think he was coming back.
He's overdosing.
He's done it twice, and then there were stashes of money down the back of the toilet, because the top of the toilet was off, and he was stashing it in there. Because my mum would try and find it, and he was stealing things, the Xbox, and selling it, and my mum was he was blaming it on me, and my mum thought it was me. And I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, I'm battling like between my mum, who thought was the only person who would actually listen to me, but it was like she wasn't listening to me because she was so in love.
You're getting a rough ride.
So I'm like, man, this is fucking hard. And then I remember it clear as day, and it's probably the bit I've only just accepted maybe about half a year ago. Clear as day, the words, and she was just angry. She probably didn't mean it at the time, but as a little boy, that scarred me. And she was like, you fucking shut your puss, you get the fuck out. You're nothing but a mistake. You should never have been here. And I was like, what? And she was like, you heard, you weren't planned, you were a mistake, get the fuck out of this house. And that day on,
what age were you?
I was probably about 12 around that time, so going into high school. So, and I remember it sunk, man. It was like this feeling in me. Never since there, it was like I went numb. And then I was lost in life, like just so much anger in me. But I think that was at that time where I learned to like block trauma out. Because then when I got back to my mum's, I went through a period, he was still there.
So you
I got kicked out, I went to my nana's.
Right, how long were you there?
Probably a couple of months until I was a terror about fucking set her house on fire and blew it up.
You're no whiter than white. You're causing mayhem as well. It's not like the poor boy's getting, there's no smoke without fire. You're causing that a wee bit.
I've caused the fire. Right. Remember, I got kicked out of there, playing my box of matches, trying to do this wee trick everybody used to do. They'd line all the matches up and I lit one, and it went up in flames, a wee box, and I'm like, fuck, what did I do? On the top drawer, and I fucked it in there, and I went, whew. About 10 minutes later, kitchen's up in flames. I'm like, my nana and that sleeping. I'm like, no. I went to the kitchen. I was trying to like get something to eat, and she's like, what are you talking about? She's deaf. She's like, trying to get her wee fucking her wee earrings in, man. And she's like, what is it, what you saying? I'm like, no, you need to come down. Dodge ran downstairs and he's like, what the fuck's going on? It's up in flames, man. I was like, it wasn't me, honestly. It wasn't me. And they're like, what do you mean it wasn't you? I went, I kind of came down, it was on fire. And they're like, how? Then obviously I had to eventually admit that.
Doing up.
So that didn't last for very long, and I got back to my mum's bit. Hank seemed a wee bit better. He looked a bit better. And it got worse. I then started to see him, like, he was getting aggressive with my mum, obviously. Like, we would question him, like, look at the nick of you, he's getting in a worse state. And I had to go through periods of when I seen him, like, kind of beating my mum up, which is a hard fucking truth to face. And you're standing there just as a young laddie, but there's this adult who's way bigger and stronger than you. And I remember, like, for a year solid, I went to the gym, kept lifting weights, and it's just like this anger that was building up inside of me, but it was driving me to train harder and harder. And I started getting a bit bigger, and as I was growing, 13, 14, and I took a bit of a stretch, and I remember he used to pin me, and I'd see the aggressiveness in his face, and he used to ragdoll my mum, grab her by the hair, and he'd be hitting her, and it's like, it sounds brutal when I'm talking about it, but I thank those moments, because that moment he had taken my mum like halfway down the street, and I remember that time I was like, nobody's here to fucking help you, man. People do not give a fuck. My whole street was looking at the blinds. I was like screaming, like a young kid crying at the door. Like, somebody fucking help. My mum's getting like hit, and he's like punching her down the bottom of the street. My wee brother's trying to look, and he's crying. I'm like, get the fuck in the house. And like, I've shoved him and shut the door, ran down, and I remember I just fly kicked him in this hedge. And it was that moment, it was like this anger just released, and I had him on, like, at the end of the pavement. I remember just hitting him, and my mum's like, fucking get off him. And I remember just booting him like in the head for a bit. I don't know kind of how long it went on for, but I didn't see nothing other than I didn't give a fuck if he dies. Like, I just seen rage and hate. And then the police come in the corner, pulled me off him, separated everything. And that day then was probably the trigger of, like, nobody gives a fuck about you, man. Like, people do give a fuck about you, but the people who act as your neighbours and have got your back and all that, they stood there and watched that. And I was like, how can people sit and watch that? Unless you're willing to kind of stand up and, like, do something about that yourself. Like, there was nobody coming to help. How long would that have went on for? Could it have been the opposite end and my mum could have went away? And I remember that, just that trigger then, it was like, I just had so much anger growing up through school. I got kicked out 30 times. I was on my last 2 warnings and I had to go to off campus. And they would say, you wouldn't be back at high school. I just wanted to fight teachers. I would flip chairs, chuck tables, everything. It was just anger. Anybody in my face, it's like trauma, PTSD almost to him, reflecting in my face. And one teacher, I remember her, so shout out to Mrs. Buon if she ever hears this, because I want to hunt her down one day and thank her, because she was the teacher that probably changed my life at high school. I had no fucking grades, man. I was just like lost. I lost, dark soul, numb. Remember my mate, he talks about it outside my headmaster's office. I was getting lines and I was just fucking scribbling like this on a bit of paper, just like a big black hole. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, shut it. Scribbling away like that, no lines. My headmaster's like, what's this? That's like all that was going in my mind. It was just like a black hole constantly. Then it got to a point where Mrs. Buon was there and she says, what are you going to do when you leave? That's your end of school. You're going to stay on? I went, I'm not allowed to stay on. She was like, of course you're allowed to stay on. I went, nah, I've got no grades. She says, don't worry, we'll make them better. And she helped me and she got my English up. My maths went up. Obviously I was decent at PE. And then art, believe it or not, was my gateway to probably relieving my brain. I was always creative. And I got a higher in art. That was my only higher. So I was always creative with my hands, always had a creative mind. And that was kind of like what probably kept me sane, I would say. I would draw.
What was it like when she said that? Because it seems like you've been going through this chaos. You're causing the chaos because you're reacting to the chaos that you're around, and it's just a swirling sort of environment of mayhem.
Aye.
And you're seeking the validation. Comes in the form of the your brother's dad goes back to chaos. You're kicked out of the house. You're setting your nan's house on fire. It's just chaos. Somebody arrives and goes, hey, look, a wee bit of belief in you.
Aye, that was the moment. That was that. Not even that. It's like, not even like, it was like a fucking angel was sent in, man. That was that feeling. It was just like, it was like this soul that just felt fucking like pure and like full of love. I was like, oh, that's maybe what like love feels like. I never knew what it really felt like growing up. I just had this pain of like numbness, like couldn't feel nothing. And I was like, she actually believes in me. And it was like that moment, like somebody believing in you. I was like, it sparked like this deep remembrance in me. Feel like whether it was a young kid or people talk about lives before, but there was something in me that like sparked inside of me. Was like, you know what, like, I can do this, I can be anything I want to be. And when she pushed me, she got me to stay on, and she got me into, I actually became a prefect, believe it or not. My mates always used to laugh, and they were like, remember when you were a prefect? I was like, I know, the fucking idiot that was kicked out all the time, to then have to wear a wee prefect jacket and that. And I was like, I used to hate wearing it, mate. Like, still wear my trackies, but a prefect blazer. So,
What an image.
oh man, it was horrible. Looking back, I'm
What
like,
an
what was I
image.
doing? Like,
Sort of represents where you were at, wasn't it?
chaos, mate. Even my style was
And then
chaos.
a wee bit of potential there.
I'm not even giving a fuck, man. So it's like, even like you see people going to school and that now, like they're all trendy and that, man. Like they make blazers look cool, but I say they should wear a pair of trackies again, man.
So where did you? So like where did you end up going for there?
For there, she kind of got me.
You sound like you are mayhem.
This is just the start. That's why I says, where do we start? And I said on this podcast, because I want to write a book eventually, and we'll come back to that a wee bit. But essentially, what I've been through as a journey, and I didn't want to tiptoe around in it. Like I've done it in the past. Some people know my story, and then when I eventually do tell them, they go, holy fuck. But I didn't even want people to say that. Like, I just want that to reach people, because I know there's going to be kids that come up through an environment the same as me. There's plenty of them out there. But there's plenty of them that didn't believe in themselves, or their parents didn't believe in them, and they think they've got no purpose in life. And they could be the next, like, best thing in the world. They've got probably fucking rakes of talent inside them, but they just didn't care it. They need that one person to believe in them.
It's like when you see somebody that's been so starved of, you know, the things that you need to like really accelerate yourself. It's the tiniest, and I mean the tiniest little bit of encouragement that it is so powerful, and not in the sense of outwardly, because you don't notice it. It's what it sets off within somebody that just needs that little nudge, that little bit of, hey, look, you're all right. You should see this energy that you've got. It's all over the place.
It's a wee
It's
glow,
chaos.
right? It's
like, how about we point it at something? How about we just go over there?
That's the way you go.
And it's that tiniest bit of encouragement that goes so far.
That was Mrs. Buon that done that for me. She got
What's her name?
Mrs. Buon.
Buon.
It was a French name. I could never.
What type of teacher was she?
We used to call English, but it was a French name. We used to call Mrs. Baboon. Mrs. Buon. We could never say her name right, and it was Buaoun. And so we all just called her Baboon. Yeah. She obviously hated it, so we grew up as terrors in the football. She started running the school football team. We had a good team. We were all just not jobs, but good at football, mate. Like, that's all we ever knew. We'd play in the Astro till like 11 o'clock at night. And it was back then when the street lights would go off. Yeah, that was when you had to get home. And if you it was dark, man, your mum would be waiting for you at the door. So we used to play on the Astro for years, and she got me into I then coached the team below. And then I was the captain of the team, and they all used to be like, Mrs. Bjorn fancies you and all that. And I'm like, well, it's no, I just had that grit and dedication in me. It was like, I would almost help drive the football team, because they like just that. I loved that drive behind you. It made me play better, see people kicking you about the park, and I used to get called Twinkle Toes. I was a greedy cunt with the football, mate.
It's even that sense of like what she's displayed there is, you know, a real bit of wisdom in terms of, if you want the best out of someone, put them in charge of something.
That's it.
And she's gave you that sense of responsibility, and that signals to you, hey, look, you know, you're not worthless. You can do something.
That was it.
And it might not seem that big a thing, but to somebody who's really starving for that little bit of
Just
like,
wee bit, mate,
just that wee bit. Hey, you're okay.
And I remember that moment, even just sliding the Captain Armband out with just a young man. It's some of the high school team, but we went then on to, like, me, Darryl and Dale and all of that. We went on to, we got picked for like a Scotland select team for the high school, and that's so I dedicated myself. Most of my mates went away and drank and all of that, and then they were obviously doing that for a young age. I never drank. I used to just be like, oh, I'm not touching that. Never eat a McDonald's, never fizzy juice. I was obsessed, training, football, all of that. And then eventually I went on to like, got scouted for the Pars, and then trialled with them, and then East Fife. And then we played with them, and then I remember getting a call up for East Fife, and it was coming up for my 18th birthday, and I used to use a fake ID before that. My mate, it was the first time I ever experienced nightlife. And then we went and I was meant to get a call up on a Sunday. It was my birthday. Stevie Crawford was the gaffer then, and I remember I went back to a house party, and that was the first time I took drugs. Fucked it, man. I remember that day clear as anything. What happens if I take that? I'll die and that. And they're like, oh, you'll be fine, man. It makes you feel amazing. You'll be all right for football them on. Fucked it, man. I had 3 voicemails. Where the fuck are you? I was meant to get a call up to kind of, whether I was playing with the first team or even being on the sub bench. that was probably a chance to then shine and progress forward. But I fucked it for that day, and there was a bit of just partying there. I felt good because it was party validation again, right? You're being accepted by all these men who are like going about, and you're pulling women, and you're getting this validation for women. It feels like this love that was missing in your life, and you're replacing all the other emptiness with drugs and alcohol, and you're getting this fulfillment, but you didn't realise at the time what the lack of fulfillment was. So then I went on for a period of going hardcore and probably just the usual, sitting in gas till Sunday morning, Monday morning, get worse. Went for a period of, I started selling drugs thinking it was cool back then. And again, that was probably like me, probably wanted to be seen and being validated, right? I had these shiny objects. My mum could never afford a car. I bought a car where I had my driving licence. But there was a moment that it clicked in me again where I was like, I used that money almost business savvy, whether people like to have heard it or not. I've heard of people like probably selling drugs and they've got the most successful businesses. I'll not name the businesses, but yeah, you know how there's people out there. They've just got a business savvy mind, and I put myself through education. With that money, I saved it. I never had money, mate.
It's it's interesting you say this. One of the questions that came up was, are all millionaires dodgy? I says it's not quite as easy an answer as you. It's not quite as simple as yes or no, is it? Because you have millionaires that are not that haven't broken the law, and you have millionaires that are criminals.
That's it.
If you put them all in a room, you wouldn't be able to decipher which one was which, because they all share common attributes.
Aye.
There's a common thread in them all. And then you have an entire grey area of the ones in the middle that it's not entirely clear if their interpretation of what rule breaking is, is open to interpretation. And but the thing is that they will all have that thing in common. They'll have leadership, sense of opportunity, being able to expand. They'll figure out that they can get people to work for them.
That's it.
They'll essentially, like you would grow a business. Same thing. So like if you look at how these sort of operations go together, legal or illegal, moral or immoral, it's very, very, very clear that the same formula to make it successful, whether it's moral or immoral, is very similar, and the people will be very similar in terms of how they do it.
There was a podcast I listened to. It was on Spotify. Can't remember the name of it, but it was kind of one where it was filtering through like multiple wee clips there, and there was a dude was talking about how I was in the jail, I was on the streets, all this kind of stuff, and he was like, I would study millionaires. I was obsessed. They were putting investment into this and doing this, and I would study them and study them and study them, and they would always say the same thing. We would give back, we'd give back, we'd give back, and he was like, I always wondered what they would do, and he was like, what are they giving back? And then they say they would give this investment back to people, right? So they were always helping people, but he says, I started watching like why they were so successful, and he would always say, like, it's the same thing as when I was growing up on the street. The best product would get the best money because people would always buy the best product. He says, as long as your product in terms of business is the best product on the market, people will always have money for it. And he was like, and that was the same way as where he was on the streets, and he took that street mind of being there selling drugs, being in jail, come out, and then he became like a millionaire after that because he took the street savviness of like, well, it's just the same thing, right? It's a product at the end of the day. Take drugs away from it, people are willing to buy, right? So where people are willing to distribute their money is usually on the best products. Why do we always buy off like Nike or the best brands? It's the best product, right? Their quality's better usually. To somebody who's like just coming up and through the ranks, it's like, well, I'm not too sure about them. Like I didn't know too much about it, but they're like the Nike of the streets. So
yeah, I mean the thing being is that anybody that sees an opportunity, they're going to see supply and demand.
That's it.
Right, they're going to see price and
That's
margin.
exactly what he spoke about.
They're going to see market size, where you can begin, how big you can get,
markup, yeah,
what kind of value you can bring,
exactly.
What other people are missing, where's the opportunity, where's the niche that you can fit into,
exactly.
What are people wanting that's not there just now. And you will see that people will go out and hunt for that, and they can be on both sides of the fence, but they'll all be looking at they'll be looking at it through the same lens. And that's the thing is that, and in terms of like giving back, that's the thing is that when you imagine what it was like for instance, you want to write a book, your writing the book is driven by your desire to have somebody like you that could go and talk to the younger you, There's somebody that could
exactly.
go, you can't go back because your experience is gained from you going through all that.
Going through
But what you want to do is have something where there's a young guy out there who is maybe experiencing and feeling the same things, and you want to give him the North Star, going, hey, look, kid, I know how you feel. This is how you feel. You feel hopeless. You feel like you want to lash out. You feel like nobody really cares about you. You probably feel like you don't care about yourself. You probably say, why bother? You probably say, this is what I'm going to get. You probably say all these things to yourself. But just like Mrs. Bowen, or
Mrs. Bowen,
she said to me, I'm going to say it to you.
That's it.
And sow the seed. And it's that same thing when you have someone who's maybe trying to get into the same sort of thing. They want to become an investor. They want to become a property guy. They want to become, a businessman. You can see it in them. You say, look, you want to give them that wee bit of encouragement. You say, look, have a go, because the pie's big enough for everybody. It's not like a lot of people think it's cutthroat and it's all about trampling over competition. It's just not the case. There's people that see the world like that, but it's just not quite like that in reality. So when you get out your, you mentioned that you were on the dealing front. What did you do to get away from it?
Well, that's
assuming that you're away from it.
Well, that was what probably started the start of the cascade, the fucking downward spiral. I think was obviously looking back. I'm not proud of it, but looking back, like I wouldn't have changed any of it. And the reason being because it got me to exactly where I am today, and I probably wouldn't be on this podcast if I didn't go through that same pathway. I reckon if I was up with an upbringing of nice parents and all of that, I would have been in a completely different life. Wouldn't probably be doing this stuff, but I do believe I've got a purpose. A lot of people say it's to heal, whatever. And there is a sense of like healing to me, but not healing is like, I just think like it's sparking the amber in somebody like who came for the environment to me, because they're the people that need the chance as well. And I believe that's probably a bit of my purpose, is to, the thing I was lacking the most of, I had to go through every up and down to figure out what that is, and I can give that out in abundance. And that's like my wealth in abundance to give it to them. And through the drugs was, I got to a point where, because I had such a fucking creative mind, mate, I started hitting paranoia. I was an extremist, man. Like I was always
creative paranoia.
Probably, mate. Like I would make shit out of my head, and I'm like, mate, wake up in the morning, like, what the fuck were you thinking, man? Yep. Like just in rooms making up this shit. Like you're making these events up in your head, and like just obviously gets to a point of sleep deprivation, and then it's like a cascade of fucking thoughts, and the paranoia kicks in. But I would always be the class clown, right? Like I would always be the centre of attention, but I was always a joker, and I like to fucking piss around. And the best one, I was telling somebody the other day, and they were like, when was your best time on like benders and that? And I was like, I remember the day clear as any, man. I was fucked for 2 days, right? And I was like sitting there, my mates come in and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, dude, put these glasses on. And it was like these cinema glasses, the 3D ones, and I had kitchen roll tube sellotape to them, so they looked like binoculars. And I had this big road map on, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, tell me that you can't see people waving on that road map. And he's like, what are you talking about? So I had these glasses on, obviously, tripping balls, like looking at this map, thinking I can see people walking about on this road map waving at me. And I was like, put them on, you'll see it. That was that time for there. It was like, fuck knows where my mind is going on this stuff, man. But I got to a point where I had 2 periods of really bad paranoia. The worst one, I didn't want to be here anymore, man. I was like, fuck, I'm done. Like, I went too far. I got to a point with paranoia. I got back to my mum's bit, dude, and got to this point I started...
if you're back to her bit, you've went really far, if that's your sanctuary.
You're going back to your mum, who you think your mum doesn't love you and she didn't hear your back, but you're going there for a wee bit of safety, right?
I've watched the man OD, the brother's dad OD twice, but I'll go back there because it's safe. It's way safer than where I've been. Well, what is going on?
I know.
What drug was it? What drug was it that made you go back there?
It was that MCAT. It was going about that plant feeder, man. That fucking plant feeder.
Plant feeder?
Aye, remember that?
Like Bubbles,
Magic or MCAT it was called, man.
Was that Bubbles? Like,
kinda, aye. It was, fuck knows. They were saying it was legal, man. They were calling it plant food, and then fucking mad. This shit was crazy.
Buy on the internet, man.
Really?
It was fucking awesome.
It was, mate, best times of my life, like the best parties I've ever had. But
paranoia after it.
That fucked you up, man. It started off legal, man. We used to get the postie delivering it through the door for £7 a gram, and I'd be like, there's a postie, man. Like, fucking, he's just like,
That was mad.
the postie's your
Plant food.
dealer. Like, what the fuck is that all about?
And did you thank Royal Mail for that?
Yeah, we bammed him up a wee time. We were all sitting on it one night, and we'd still been sitting up, and we're like waiting on the postie coming with this order comes through, and I'm sitting there. I used to make dog noises at the
First
letterbox.
class delivery.
Couldn't chat, so he stopped delivering it through the letterbox. I was like, well, fuck that up, haven't I? So
actions and consequences.
So, aye, that period there, man, there was a bad period, man. I'm not even proud of that, and it was fucked up. I got back to my mum's, but I was that paranoid. I was sitting outside my mate's door and he wouldn't answer, and my fucking phone started making walkie-talkie noises. It ran out of battery, and I was fucking adamant that phone was turning on and off and be like, and I'm like that, and then I could hear like a helicopter noise, and I could see blue sirens, and it was like the dark clouds, and I'm like, man, my heart rate's fucking going through the roof, and it's getting like darker and dingier, and I'm like, this whole world just closing in on me. And then my mate called Hot Pot, he used to talk like he had a hot potato in his mouth, man. He's like, he fucking rips the door on me. He's like, oh, Reece, what are you doing? Fuck you. Get in here. He's like, what time is it? It's like 4 a.m, mate. I'm like, Scott, you need to let me in, man. Took me along to my mum's. He's like, you need to get to your bed, you fucking... He's like, you need to stop doing that shit. And I was like, I know. And I sat at my mum's bed. And
You've literally turned into the brother's dad.
That's it, mate. But in a
full
sense,
circle.
that's it. I've seen that growing up, so I didn't think any better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like I looked up to that in terms of like, well, that's life.
You came down to the level that you're used to, know the potential that you've got.
Yeah.
So coming back to that, he was actually a saviour after that fucking turn out my mum's living room. I was hearing the blue sirens again. I'm peeking out the windies, and I'm like, oh no, I'm on edge, right? And I remember breathing on the windies, and like, remember when you used to breathe and write shit on the window? And I remember it was like a Da Vinci Code. I was like, I can see like fucking Morse code on this window. Steamed up the whole window, and I was like trying to work out this like writing. I was like, oh no, they bugged this living room and that, man. My fucking mind went, mate. I took all the chandeliers down from my mum's living room, unscrewed the skybox, and then I listened to the telephone, the old telephones back then. I'm listening to my mum talking to my wee brother's grand. I'm like, I can't, he's fucking talking about me. It was you, just fucking set me up and that. She came down and she's like, what the fuck's went on in here? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm losing my shit, man. He's a bug song. I found this wee thing with like a wee battery with a wire on it. Like, he's a fucking lost the plot, mate. Like, that point I could have just... One of my mates went down to War 2 after that, and fucking... He's never
War 2 is in the psychiatric
Oh,
ward.
aye, fuck bit, man.
Is that the loony bin?
The loony bin, mate.
That
And that's
where
where I thought I was going, like, genuinely.
Padded room stuff?
I just fucked in that ward, man. Like, they're putting you on steroids, you come out all ballooned up, you're just like, didn't even ken who you are anymore.
Right.
That period there
You didn't
was
know when
scary.
you went in.
Huh?
You wouldn't have kept where you were when you went in.
Well, I broke down, man, at the back door, and I was just great, and I was like, I didn't care what to do anymore, I didn't care what I'm doing, I didn't care who I am, all this, blah, 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 and I was like, I just fucking didn't care where I am in life. And my wee brother's dad came in, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I remember, I think this is when he went to rehab, and he was getting a bit better, and he gave me Valium, and it fucking knocked me out. And then the next day, and he was like, how are you feeling? And I remember he's like, didn't ever put yourself in that place again? I was like, I'm not. And I remember going, teetotal off it then. Kind of just got myself on a straight and narrow back into fitness and that again. Got a pain management clinic.
Pain management?
Pain management. I got into like physio, and I was always obsessed with the human body for something. It was
were you on opioids or painkillers or what was it?
Back then? Nah, nothing, mate. I just went... I was like, I think it was that turning point, that spark in you. It's like,
why were you in pain management?
Oh, no, like a clinic. That was my business, pain management, like physio.
Ah, right.
I went into I went in to study, obviously, sports and remedial and massage and functional needling and everything like that. So then I had a successful business with that for 6 years, and I kind of turned my life around for that period to like there. And then looking back, I kind of got myself on the straight and narrow. And then I met somebody through that clinic. There was a girl that came in, man. Because I was lacking love in my life. This is how I got into breathwork. We're getting there, by the way, after that fucking long journey. A girl came in, and I started like... I just seen her when she first pulled up at the car park, and I remember it when she pulled up, and I was like, holy fuck, man. I'd been single for a year for another long-term relationship. I was like, I'm happy, I'm content, and I was planning on moving to Australia. I was saving up, I was doing good with my business, and she rocks up, man, and she comes out, and she just got this cool style and that, and I was like, nice big smile. And I was like, fuck, I was like, I'm into her, man. I didn't even care her, and she's just walking in my door. There's something inside of me. I was like, I didn't even know her. Anyway, she's on the bed, and I see it. She's got a fucking wedding ring and that on, and this feeling's like brewing up inside of me. And I was like, this is a feeling I've always been wanting. I knew that I didn't settle in a relationship because there was something missing. For me, love was like, everybody's like, oh, you're looking for this fairy tale. And I was like, well, why should it be anything less than that? Like, why would you settle for anything less? I was like, I know the feeling I'm wanting. And they're like, you'll never get it because you're never happy. And then I got that feeling, mate, and it was like, that's the feeling I've been looking for. And it kept getting and building. She was coming in for these like sessions. It would get stronger and stronger, and then we were kind of chatting back and forth. And I was like to my mate, I was like, here, dude, you think this chick's into me? And he was like, what? What do you mean? And he was like, is that the lass that's married? And I was like, aye. He was like, fucking hell, see if that was my wife, I would have murdered her, man. He was like, she shouldn't even be messaging you like that. And I was like, I know, man, but there's no kisses or that. Like, so I didn't care if she's that into me. Like, surely she'd slide a wee kiss in. And I was knocking in a wee kiss here and there, nothing back. And I was like, she's just got that kind of banter, mate, and I like that. And then he was like, mate, 100% she's into you, man. So I remember we were kind of messaging back and forth, and she's like, why are you single then? Surely you didn't struggle to get ladies. And everybody used to think I was confident, and I wasn't confident, mate. I hid behind this shell. Low self-esteem, man, but I put on this front that I was confident. And then I remember messaging on just saying like, oh, just not really into anybody, I'm not really clicked. And I wrote, if you had a twin sister, I was like, that would be perfect, man, ha ha ha. Just saying a bit of banter with her. And then she was like, wait, are you thinking like what I've been thinking? And I was like, what is it? She's like, can I FaceTime you? And I was like, oh fuck. I remember sinking an edible just an hour before that, mate, and it's starting to kick in. And I'm like, FaceTime? I didn't think it's the time to FaceTime, man, but I was like, this is the moment. Fucking there's me on FaceTime, eyes like piss holes, try to like act straight, because she, like to me, she was straight laced. I was like, didn't want her thinking I'm like a wee stoner or something like that. We're having this like conversation, and then she was like, I got this feeling when I came in the door, and I was like, what feeling was it? And she was like this feeling I can't make sense. So she's like, I'm married, I'm happy, like I shouldn't be getting this. And I was like, well, I got it 10, I wasn't expecting it either. So I was like what the fuck is it? So obviously this went on a cascade of her leaving her marriage, and then we went together, and
So you slipped that in. You just slipped that in.
well, we'll not go too much into that, but like, I don't know why I go into the details of the other dude, man. Like, I'm not a home wrecker. Like, obviously she made that decision to move up for where she was living down south, and then mate, this thing just like grew. It was like a fairy tale, man. It didn't feel like real life, and I was like, man, this is what like real love's like all about. And we were in this bubble for months and months. Like when we were in this space, it was like time didn't exist, man. And like I always cherished that moment, and it was like so passionate. Like I'm quite a deep intimate person as well, so I always lacked touch and intimacy. And she said she wasn't intimate, but I made her feel like that, and it brought her out of her shell. And then we clicked, man. It was like two souls connecting on a deeper level rather than just a physical level. And that moment, then it started like spiraling, mate. Like fucking something happened in terms of like through that. I didn't really want to speak because I respect what happened for her in terms of I would never speak about that, but that triggered her to also go through a cascade of emotions for her marriage to what happened with me and her.
You need to start writing like romance novels.
I know, mate. It's like
there's lassies out there just hanging on your every word here.
It's building up that momentum, mate, and it is. And like I stuck by her for like so many times. She wanted to.
Are you quite a romantic guy?
I would say I am. Like, right. I didn't show it, but like,
I've got no romance in me. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, what is he on about?
So
there's women out there that will make £8 a novel. You're in. You are in.
But this is what I think is like, I feel, and I want to give that to like men as well. I'm not saying like fucking Mr. Boomtastic or whatever. Like,
what do you want to give to men?
Like, to look beyond in like a physical level, man. Like, to be able to. For me, I always used to like, if I was sitting with my partner, like, do you need to look at somebody to like feel physically attracted to them, or can you close your eyes and just like be in their presence, and what can you feel? Like, how many people can shut their eyes and be next to their partner and tell you exactly how they feel? What's going through you in that moment? And if they say nothing, like, is there a connection there, mate? Or is it a physical attraction you've got with her? Is it lust, or is it really love? And for me, like, a lot of it was lust with me because I was looking at the external figure. I used to look at their shape, their figure, how they dressed, how they done that. But how many times did I try and look beyond that? How many times did you close your eyes? How many times do people actually, like, when they're kissing their partner and their eyes are closed, are they connecting beyond just them? Are they connecting as like two people together? Do you feel that? And probably a lot of people can't feel that. And I think that just takes time, mate. Like, it takes time to actual trust that it's there. And trust that you need to speak truth to yourself, because I think a lot of people are in dead-end relationships
I suppose it's also finding the right person.
Aye.
Because a lot of people are in relationships that it just happened, but maybe that connection isn't there. Because that's where I was in my previous relationship, my marriage.
But you stayed there for safety, right, or a bit of fulfilment?
As I'm saying, I wouldn't say fulfilment. It was probably safety. It was fear. Probably taking the easy decision. That was one of the two. The easy decision was to stay, be unhappy for 35 years till I die, or make the difficult decision of breaking up my family and moving on and being happy. But inevitably, everybody will be happier on the other end, because living in an unhappy relationship it's no good for anybody, not just yourself. It's no good for the other person, because you're holding them back from finding their soulmate or their next best thing. Your kids are not happy because they can feel energy. Kids can feel what's happening, even if you're not physically arguing, shouting and things. But the atmosphere, in a bad relationship, kids can feel it.
So, just finding out a wee bit more about you two. You're about as opposite ends of the scale as could possibly be in terms of where you started, what your story was. He said, he says, I'm pretty boring and humdrum, and I started a business and I measured it with money. And then you've got Reece, who's having utter chaos, pandemonium that cuts both ways.
Zero money.
He's been exposed to pandemonium.
Nothing.
He's causing pandemonium. He's writing love story novels to women out there that are married. Just they're hanging on his every word. And how do you two cross paths? How does that happen?
So that was a bit where for that relationship I started getting a bit eggshelly, mate, and then to a period where I felt good, mate, I started losing myself in the relationship. Looking back at it, I didn't see it at the time, but I stuck by her so many times. I had her back and I was like, man, like that feeling I'll never come across again. Like I truly believed I wouldn't ever get it again, and I didn't know why it was with her, why it was with a married person. Like what the fuck, questioning so many things. So I got to a period when I kind of moved in with her and it was getting worse, and it was just almost like I was lying to myself, and I pushed it to the back of my mind.
What were you lying about?
Just me, man. I lost myself and I started giving up the gym, giving up my jiu-jitsu, stopped training as much. I would train with her because she didn't like going to the gym on her own, so I would start giving up my time and go with her. And I gave a lot of my time to her, and I've nothing against that, but I stopped giving myself my own time, and that's when I started losing myself. I started losing my purpose. And I remember she used to question me with a lot of things, like the way I held my cutlery and the way I spoke and things like that, and I was like, these wee things started building up, and I'm like, what do you mean, like the way I hold my fucking cutlery? Like, I'm for the scheme, man. Like, I hold everything like a spade. Like, I've not been taught any fucking table manners, like how you're fought knife and that goes.
And did you feel that she was like condescending and
Aye. I started feeling a wee bit like, almost like I wasn't good enough, mate. Like, and it was like, almost like she started this is how I felt, not since she'd done it, but at that moment I started feeling like I didn't have money and she came for this lifestyle in Cheshire and all of this, and they had drivers and all of that, mate. And I remember saying, oh, I'm going to take you to Edinburgh with a driver to get your mates for your birthday. And I'm like, no, man, I'm going on the train with my mate. And I'm going to have like a bottle on the train, and like, I want to be with my mates. £5 for the train or fucking 100 odd quid for a Mercedes driver. Like, what's that? That's not me. Like, I am who I am and I'm not going to change that. Like, there is a part of me where I kind of want to be a wee bit better about myself and kind of come at that environment and be a bit more respectful. So I started kind of losing myself, even the way I was dressing and that, mate. Like, I then started realising I was doing everything for her, and then I got pushed out. I remember this, it was getting eggshell, I was getting the paranoia again. I felt like she was still messaging her like ex-partner, like that wasn't fully separated, the separation wasn't there. So I felt like I was in this like love triangle, man. Like,
and were you?
For me, there was a point where I found there was something that happened where I found a message on her phone and everything like that, and it got denied, it got deleted. And that moment there, that triggered everything in me, man. All the insecurity, all the paranoia, everything I was looking at for before. But there was a gut instinct in me. I knew it. There was something telling me, but I was telling myself, nah, mate, you're being paranoid. It's that gut instinct that he's talking about. You just can.
Which is a difficult decision.
I was watching and I was like, nah, she can't do that, man. Like, there's no way we can be in that feeling, that like fucking bubble, and then there's no way she would do that. And I didn't believe it, mate. And then still to this day, she didn't show me the message. It was deleted. And I hit rage. I wanted to drive up for England. I wanted to go home, all this. And I brushed it to the back of the carpet again, man, because I was just so in love with her. And then I kept marching on, pushing it to the side, all these other things, pushing it to the side, to the point where I became like so frail and fragile, man. I wasn't even a man, or didn't have a purpose anymore. I was lost. I was like, what the fuck do I want to do in my life? And then was a point where twice I broke down on the end of her bed, and all I wanted was an arm around my shoulder, man. I'd never fucking had it growing up, ever. All I want...
Did she send up the driver?
Well, you fucking be better doing that, man. And I was just like, not even in a pondering way, just at the end of the bed, like, you're just so broken, and all you want is, like, the person who you're madly in love with just to put an arm around you and just be like, everything's going to be all right. And honestly, mate, that's all I needed, and I would have been fine. And I remember walking out the house, and this happened twice, and she was like, you fucking do that again, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, she was like, I'm done with that. And I remember...
Do what again?
Like, walk out again like that.
Right.
But then there was also a factor with her dad used to do that, so she used to be triggered by that. So she had all her insecurities and her stuff with her family that was then triggering her through my actions, but my actions were coming through insecurities that I had missing through my upbringing. But these were all insecurities that I was lacking them. I wanted them, and when I was getting them, it was the best feeling in the world. But I was lying to myself. I didn't speak the truth to me, that I didn't love myself. I didn't feel confident in myself. And the last one was Christmas Eve. We had kind of broke up a wee bit, tried to like make back up, like, it's Christmas, let's fucking put it to the side. And I remember being on the dole, mate, like, universal credit, like, what the fuck, what's my life came to? Pain management, shut down or locked down, just this money, and then I started being on universal credit. And she's asking, like, you just never want to do anything at the weekend, you never plan anything, you never do this. And a part of me is just like so fucking embarrassed about that, mate. Like, she's living in a 350 grand house and fucking big Range Rover and everything, and then here's me, like, we dude fucking driving about in this banger on universal credit. Like, can't even take her out the weekend because I'm fucking paranoid about how much I'm going to spend. How much is that meal going to be? So, and then I flipped. I went, you can, why I've not done any of that? And here's the reason. Fucking, I've not got any money, blah, 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 all this. Universal. And she went, what are you talking about? Why are you on that? Why did you not tell me? And I says, because I didn't feel safe to tell you. I says, I've been pushing this out the back of me. I didn't feel safe to tell you any of that. And then that was the moment I think it sunk in for her, and she was like, holy shit. And then I was like, and I broke down again, and I still didn't even get an arm around me, man. That's all I wanted.
Not even for the driver?
Nah, the driver wasn't there. I was hoping he'd be excited to take me down the road for Christmas. Well, luckily I had my van there, and I remember I fucking slammed it, and I says, I'm done. Like, I says, I can't take this anymore. All these voices were in my head building up, just being like, you're worthless, you're not good enough, all these things. And I was like, why is it never enough? And I couldn't make sense of it. And I was driving down the road. I was in this van. It was about fucking 2 a.m. And it was the voices over and over and over and over and over. I just didn't want to be here. I was like, give it up. I'm done with life. Like, my world's come crashing down before me. Like, this person I'm madly in love with, I've given everything up for that moment. I was driving down the road, fucking tearing. I couldn't see anything. Everything's all blurry. I remember seeing like an Arctic lorry, maybe a good couple of miles down the other road, windy road. I went, fuck it, I'm just going to go head on to there. So I started going the other side of the road. I remember like just driving down there, so fucking scared, mate. But I was like, I was confident. I was just done. I'd given up everything. Mm-hmm. Fucking still blurry sights at this point. I just remember hitting these cats. And it was kind of, I'd went off fucking grid and almost into a wee bit of like a turf. And it was there, I kind of like snapped out, and I was like, what the fuck? And I just broke down for about good 15-20 minutes, man. And I just like, why? I couldn't make sense. I'm fucking screaming at that point, like, why? And I went home and I lay in my bed. No messages, man. Like, I was just hoping, like, she's like, come back up here. I just wanted a wee message, mate. And then it still nothing. Christmas Day, the next day, I'm lying, I wake up, nothing like Merry Christmas. Sends a message to her dad, and I was like, Merry Christmas, mate, to all your family, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm not going to be there. And then he didn't even reply back to me. Read it. I was left on red, mate, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, you're up there with all your family, and I'm in here, like, fucking... couldn't even get a turkey, mate. I was eating a pot noodle for Christmas dinner because all the shops were shut, and I was like, fuck, didn't think that one out. But that's the part I laugh about. But I lay there, man, with just...
What flavour?
It was the old classic, the green one, mate.
Chicken and mushroom.
Aye.
For
a wee bit of toast, buttered love pack on the toast.
Living the dream.
It was,
yeah,
mate,
council Christmas.
Universal credit, council house, fucking pot noodle, back to the old days.
We've said that, because we've both been to the depths of despair, financially and in terms of life as well. But we're going to look back. We're going to be like, remember that? Remember when we had that for Christmas dinner? Pot noodle.
What would you say, like, to anybody out there that's sort of like feeling like that?
Yeah, there's only one way to go, man. You know, when you're on the bottom, there's only one way up, and it's an easy thing to say, because when you're in that fucking position, you kind see the wood for the trees. Is a good analogy for it. You're literally everything. It's like a snowball effect. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. You just kind of need to break that cycle somehow, and just it comes back to mindset. And for me, It was just doing the cold water, just changing your mindset, doing something that's totally different to what you've been doing. Because
you need to break the cycle.
Break the cycle, aye. So I can't remember who said it, but like doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity or something like that. And it is, because that's what we do. We do the same shit every day, all over and over and over. We go out and do the same job. We go out and do the same stuff for our families. Go to the same places, eat the same things. Even when you go to Tesco's, you go the same aisle, take the same direction, up, down, left, right, the same way. Just break that cycle. Go into Tesco and take a right instead of going straight up. Just change something, just a little bit, and then work from there. And adding in these modalities, as they're called, is an easy way. They're free. Like they're free. Even with no money, you can go onto YouTube and find a breath work, like box breathing, or one that reduces stress, or one that reduces anxiety. You can find these things that are free.
So how, like, is it a case of, you know, you mentioned that being in financial despair and you're feeling like it's rock bottom. You get to the bottom, and at the time, you can laugh about it now, but at the time, you're like, this is the pits. Well, is that, like, did you two meet in the pot noodle aisle?
Nah, man.
Like, were you going, fucking, what are you doing having that? And
that's mine. He got the last one, didn't he, for Christmas?
After that was,
I think
that's when I got into breathwork.
So, like, near finishing up the end, like, I look at mine like as the end in the beginning. So it was the end of something in the beginning.
Yep.
Right, all at the same time. It was pretty much within this short period of time, a year or so. Which sounds like a year is a long time, but it's not when you're living in that. It's like you can eventually get through things and look back. So I had been practicing, you know, since the day I walked in the water, in the river, in the cold water. Then I started moving on to like trying it more often, doing it regular, which led me to Wim Hof, reading up on Wim Hof. Then I found out about the breath work and the mindset. But for me, mindset's always been, I've always had a strong mindset. I've always been able to say, you know, when everybody else is taking drugs, no, I'm not going to do that. Or, although I did it eventually, but I've always had a mindset of like, I'm going to do something different. And
meanwhile, Reece is barking at the postie.
So at that point, but there's a big age difference between us, you know what I mean? Yeah. He was probably still a kid then.
Yeah. Creative mind, mate.
Yeah, scare away your drug dealer. That wasn't very creative. But no, fuck.
So the postie's sitting there going, I don't remember him getting a dog. So I went down the journey of Wim Hof, like finding out who Wim Hof was, taking up breath work. You know, and I did that for a period of time. And as I say, I built resilience over maybe a year or two that then made me completely change the things I was doing. My marriage was failing, one, because I had went down that route. And also two, because of what my life was like with my business wasn't great for my marriage. I was never there. I was never present, like mentally. I'd come home at nights, but I was never actually there. I just thought about work the whole time. And it wasn't like an obsession with work. It was worry. Like, oh, where's the next payment coming in? Oh, this client will not pay. It's construction's a cunt. Construction, like you do 3-4 months work, then you get paid. Mm-hmm. You're not going to Tesco, get your shopping and pay for them in the next quarter. In construction, that's what happens. So you're always chasing payment. You're always chasing money. And that decade was why you're attached to that final goal of money, because you do so much work, then get paid. So I was coming home. I was kind of absent at home. But that had a great word you've been using, cascade effect, because my relationship to begin with was met through alcohol and things. Like we'd met through, like what most people do, they go to a bar and they meet on alcohol and then they get to know each other. So when I went down the route of cold water and breath work, I stopped drinking as well. I gave up alcohol. Gave up alcohol for like clean for 14 months, not one drop. But that wasn't good for my relationship, because my wife liked to go out and have a drink or go for a meal and have a drink. So then I'm not having a drink, and it was all that was ever talked about between friends and family, because we're out, people are having a drink for their meals and I'm not having a drink. So that then became like an obsession for other people. And it was the same people asking the same questions every week. You know, why are you not drinking? I'm like, fuck me, man, I've told you this like for the last 4 months, every week. So that then drove a wedge between family and friends, which is crazy. You know, not drinking, you think it's going to be like good on you, but no. So they're saying to you, they're now getting to find a problem that you're not drinking and they are.
Yeah. And then it's like, you're just a fucking bore, you know, or have a drink. Come on, stop being a fucking boring cunt. Have a wee sip. It's not going to harm you. You'll be fine. And I'm like, well, I know all the facts now because like I got obsessed with that and not drinking. You know, just a sip of alcohol sticks in your brain for 7 days. It's a depressant, alcohol, but yet it's pushed on the masses all the time. You know, drink, all these adverts to drink. So easy to do. In Scotland, you've got, you know, somebody has a kid or a baby, have a drink. Somebody's birthday, will have a drink. Your team win the league, we'll have a drink. Somebody's died. There's a reason. It's a Thursday. Let's have a drink. There's always a reason to have a drink in Scotland. And when you pull yourself out of that, you're then in the minority. Quite in a massive minority. Massively, you're in the minority, I should say. And that, for me, just made me more determined. But then it drove a wedge at home. And yeah, there was some like pretty crazy shit that happened through that lockdown period leading up to the business failing, all that kind of shit just happening in the house, in the parties. And like I was going to my bed at 9-10 o'clock. Parties were still happening through lockdown because everybody, that's the only thing they can do was party.
So everybody's boozing, you're off the drink at this point.
I'm in my bed.
Worrying about the business.
Yeah.
It's growing arms and legs, but the hole's also getting bigger.
Yeah.
The stress is getting bigger.
Yeah.
They're trying to encourage you to drink, and you're just splitting apart.
Everything's splitting apart, but it's also like you're not going anywhere. It's like you're running on a treadmill. So like I'm doing everything I can to make the business work. I'm doing everything I can to bring finances into the home. But like it was almost like you're just continually running, but nothing was going anywhere. It was actually getting worse. But I did that for 2 years, continually doing the same thing. But I was still getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning. There was people still in my fucking house having a drink, and I was going to the cold water, right? And they're thinking I'm nuts, but I'm looking at them thinking, "You've been up all fucking night drinking." But I'm the crazy one going away to the cold water. But that was helping me because like I was going there, all these problems I'd thought about all night, hardly sleeping. I was getting up, going to the cold water, and they were gone. So by like 5 o'clock, I had no stress, no anxiety, no depression, gone. Getting ready, going to the gym, going to my work or business, and then it all started again. So I would come in the morning to 100 emails, just problems. Yeah, and that's how I was doing the breath work so much back then because I needed it. Then I kind of took the decision to end my marriage and just walk away from it and move on because at that point the business was failing. I'd failed. The business had failed. We closed the doors and we started that process of like completely just moving away from that. I got a job, and then I was like, you know what, man? The things that happened through lockdown, I had asked for in the universe, so I kind of caught my wife somewhere else, and I'd asked for that because I'd wanted out the marriage. I'd wanted out the business. So the business failed. The funny thing is, when the business failed, the reason I realised I had to close it was I got COVID. And then I was stuck in the house, which was not a matter with me. I was in the house, but I had to be in the house for the 10 days. And then I was able to stand, like almost have a view of the business when I'm not there. And it was like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing? Well, you've been doing this for years. Just close this thing down.
What were you seeing?
Just literally not being in the office and just having the emails coming through and being able to make phone calls, like, and not have the disruption of being in the office and around the day-to-day running the business. I was just able to see it was a shambles. Like when I had the business, it was a reputable company. We had award-winning projects, but then when we went from 5 people to 15 people, it was like, whoa, this is just a mess. Projects were a shambles, finance was a shambles, leadership was a shambles. You know, I would like to think I'm a good leader, but possibly not a good boss. There's a difference. Like, I could sell somebody a dream. I could get them on board with what I want to do, but then actually being the figurehead or the boss where you're having to make the tough decisions, because at that time I was making the easy decisions and not the hard ones. So I seen that my responsibility there, I'd failed because I never took the decisions when I should have. But that was due to not being resilient, not having the boss role. As I say, a leader role, yeah, I could get people to buy into what I want to do, sell the dream. And you go back to the word authentic, but when you're authentic, people buy from people. And I always felt that what I sold was a good product in that business because I've got award-winning projects to prove it. And then as the company grew, that gone. Like 1 year, gone. 9 years of successful trading, gone in 1 year. And that's what got me into the breathwork and led me to do completely different things. Cold water.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing there is I've seen this so many times with so many people. People will come and ask you for advice or what should I do, how should I do things. You get a variety of different scenarios and situations. There's a common theme through them all. And that common theme is people are stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
I call it the comfort trap. It's not necessarily just financial or business. It can be anything in life. You set a goal that you want to achieve and you have a rapid rise in progress and improvement. You burn the midnight oil, you put in the hard yards, you'll do what it takes, you'll sacrifice the social aspect and so on. You'll take the measures to get there. When you get there, you take your foot off the gas. What happens is who you were to get there, you now no longer do those things that got you there. You get complacent, you make the easy decisions, you don't take the hard choices, you go with the flow, and for lack of a better word, you just become a sail ship in the sea. You're just bobbing along, not reacting to what's happening rather than actually driving the direction forward. And people have that problem all the time. And you've had it there to an extreme where it's now you've done it for so long with what you think is right that it ends up just being like, well, why should I be doing this? And that's the thing is that you need to be able to break the cycle. You need to be able to stop the thing that got you in the rut.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that you turn to breathwork and going into the cold water because you just needed that one thing to go, hey, look, I need a different perspective. You needed to unplug from what you were doing.
Yeah, I think it's so easy for people to, we've all done it, you turn to drinking drugs. But I always knew that was never going to get me anywhere. And just by chance, I'd give up the alcohol. I'd say it wasn't even chance. Like, I'd followed a lot of American entrepreneurs. And there was a guy called Andy Frisella. You heard of him? Yeah? So he does the 75 hard. And I could never ever get that completed. Have you heard of what that challenge is?
What's the 75 hard?
75 hard is, so he believes it takes 75 days to create a new habit. So you do 5 tasks every day for 75 days.
Right.
Which is like, it's fucking hard. And the tasks are read 10 pages, work out twice a day, take a photograph of your progress every day. Can't remember the other ones. There's 2 other. So these 5 tasks. And I could never ever do it. And the reason was because like 75 days is 2.5 months, but you're like, I can't do it over the summer because like barbecues, I'll be drinking. So I'm not drinking is one of them. Give up alcohol, and I can't do it in Christmas because we're going to be having like parties at Christmas. I can't do it over Halloween because so-and-so's birthday. And so then I was like, well, if I take alcohol out of the equation, then I'll be able to do this task. I'll be able to do 5 of these tasks because it's only the alcohol that I can't do. I could easily read 10 pages. I could easily take a photo, 2 workouts, one outdoor and one indoor. And that was the 5 things you had to do. Read 10 pages. That allowed me to build like a bit of momentum when not drinking. And I completed that through lockdown when I wasn't drinking. And that kept me off because I went 6 months not drinking. And then I was like, well, I'd be as well going a year. Let's try a year. But I wasn't even like trying. Once I got over like 3 or 4 months, it was just the norm. I wasn't drinking anymore. And I very seldom drink now. Like I'll have a couple of drinks, like if I go camping, but not to the extent where I'll probably never ever be in a bar again having a night out because it just, I think like 2 or 3 days it takes me to get over this. Like I feel groggy, maybe 4 days. Like I'm not even going to go back to the gym. I don't want to do anything that's got any effort in it.
I mean, I've seen that happen with people. I mean, and the thing with doing any type of plan or any type of investment, right, is the delayed gratification. So the deal is, you need to sacrifice something now, and later on it will pay off. So you mentioned that you were in property. Buy a property now, you add some value to it, later on it'll be worth more, is a classic example. You want to get in a fitness plan, you need to put in the hard work now. You form some good habits, you're going to get the payoff later on. You need to delay the gratification. So instead of going and getting the milkshake and the junk food, you need to go to the gym. Instead of using that money to go on holiday, you need to put it into the property. You want to start a business, you need to put in the work now, it'll pay off later on. If you want to buy into a business, it might be its initial beginnings. You buy that initially, it's not going to pay off now, you need to do it later. Everything in life is that delayed gratification, and that the result comes later on. The good results, the good things that come. But the hard thing with things like drink and drugs, gambling, all these sorts of lures for your time and attention is that the instant gratification is such a strong lure, and that it's a really, really nice reward. And especially if you've got stuff like you've sort of described, your stress at work, worry, chasing payments, feeling of validation, just that little dopamine hit, that little fix to make me feel good. It's all these things where you're like, well, I could just take a little bit, just have a sip, just do this. What it does is it sets off that feel-good factor. You want a little bit more, you want a little bit more, you want a little bit more. Before you know it, you're so hooked on instant gratification that delayed gratification just seems so far away, seems so far out of your mind. But logically, your brain knows, hey, look, if you do the hard bit now, you'll get the reward later on. But that desire to have it instantly is so strong. There's nobody saying that there's very few people that I know that have went out and had a great night out, whatever their particular libation or recreational desire has been. They've had a really, really good time at the time. But it seems to be the longer you do it, the aftermath, the bill that you need to pay afterwards gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And what that means, like, the hangover is not a one-day affair now. Now it's 2 days, then it's 3 days, then it's a week. And then, especially if you're trying to do something which needs your attention and focus, it doesn't matter how good you are with a hangover. If you're rough, you're not, if you're at 100% when you're free and clear and your mind's strong, even the best people, best performers out there are 60, 70, 75%. They're not firing on all cylinders. And this is the thing between are you going to delay it for the big reward, the big result? And that's, the result's not just financial, it's improvement, seeing a project through, the sense that you've achieved something, that you're worth it, that you did that. Hey, you put in the hard yards and you did that. Give yourself a pat on the back. It's these things that, it's that constant battle of the lure. And when you say to someone, hey, look, maybe you should drop the partying, maybe you should give up the alcohol, and they look at you like you've grew horns. Like, what do you mean? Have you any idea how good this is?
Yeah, the thing is, like, when people take drugs like cocaine, you get the spike in dopamine and things, but that doesn't last for long. So you're having to continue to chase that. When you go and do the cold water, you get the same spike, but it lasts all day. And you're going to get a hangover from it, or a come down. You're going to get the crap feeling. You're going to get the worry, the paranoia, the hiding behind the couch that we've all been there and done, man. You think the curtains are twitching.
Sometimes you hide behind the couch in the winter when it's fucking Baltic.
Yes, but that's the thing. But you say that, right? But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I went right through winter, like, of building that mindset that, right, it's 4:30 in the morning, I need to fucking get up, the alarm goes off, it's pitch black outside, sometimes it's like pissing or rain, snowing, but I'm going to wait to go and drive 15 minutes outside Dundee. I'm going to climb a hill, which is like a 10-minute walk, and jump in ice cold water. I've got photographs like holding icicles and that. There's more in your mindset to that than there is to, that's what I say to everybody. If you can get up in the morning and do an ice bath, or even just a cold tub, apart from women, there is nothing else that you will do harder that day. And the only thing for women is pregnancy. Like, for
you'll do the
else.
women harder, or do anything else harder?
Eh?
You'll do the women harder, or?
What I'm saying is, the only pregnancy for a woman is harder than getting an ice cold bath in the morning. If you can build that resilience and that mindset to do that.
Caveat that with saying that pregnancy is not the hard bit, because pregnancy for men dealing with pregnant women is arguably difficult. Childbirth would be the hardest. Childbirth. But the whole pregnancy bit, we need to put up with that.
Yeah.
You know, my wife's an amazing woman, but it's not a plain sailing event.
You know what? You're right. You're right. It's childbirth. So for men, there is nothing else they'll do harder that day, in my opinion. And once you do it, you'll see that. Like
When you're getting in that cold water, what women don't have is the the old gonad sort of touching that cold
yeah, I know,
water.
but I believe there's some science being done on it just now. But there is a different effect on women when they're going through their cycle and things. So women,
Is there?
yeah, some women can't get into the cold
Women
water
are solid. Women
certain times
women
of the
are
year.
solid in terms of handling pain. I know we're
Yeah, I
jesting
know.
a wee bit, but I mean, women's
They've
general
got a
pain
different type of
tolerance is
threshold, man.
they're pretty incredible. I would challenge any man. I mean, arguably men biologically are significant in terms of strength,
Yeah.
but not in terms
Pain's
of handling pain.
Yeah.
Women are a total different league from men, completely.
No, I completely agree with that. But again, their threshold would then increase more than ours. But it's spiking dopamine is similar to that of taking cocaine, but you don't have none of the hangover. And this is why you were saying people look at you like you've got horns on your head when you tell them give up the partying. They don't know any different. That's until they're they break that cycle.
Especially if they're in a they're in a situation, bad relationship, high volatility. They maybe haven't done the work in themselves. Stress with work, stress with business, stuck in the rut. It's probably the only escape that they've got, and you're saying to them, "Hey, give it up." That's the thing. Is that how would you square that away?
So it's a difficulty we're having because we're trying to sell something to people who don't know they need it because they're in a pattern of doing the repetitive things and having an escape through drinking drugs. How do we get that over to people? By continuing to provide an experience that's word of mouth is probably the best way. Just like you heard of it, your wife was only there for 20 minutes at the weekend and they felt an experience through it. So the more people that come and experience what we're doing, then the more we can grow it.
So how would you best describe what it is that you do?
I can take you beyond, probably into the science. I was just speaking to Grant the way through to back up what it is we actually do, because something a lot of people go, what is it you actually do, right?
Explain it to me like I'm 5, right?
That's it. So well, this is going to be the...
Tell me it like I'm 5. I don't know anything about it, and I don't know anything about breathwork or anything. Give me the... I'm a 5-year-old, and you're gonna give me the...
Probably better with the light spectrum then.
I would probably, so that I can give you 2 examples, but if I was speaking to a 5-year-old, for him or her to go through, to really feel what it is we do, is that 5-year-old's imagination is going to explode by times 100, because kids already before, if they're at that 5 years of 5, they're not really conditioned with the lived in society, right? Their mind is so free. Some people see that kids see spirits or they see this, they're completely open to everything. They're not really conditioned into the possibilities of what we see, or we're being conditioned into what working life is, or we go and do education, all these kind of things. They're still at that age where their brain's fully evolved and it's fully open. They're also going through that period of discovering what the world is. Like me, when I was kind of oh, what the fuck, this doesn't make sense to me in this place. So you imagine putting a kid in there and it's almost taking them into a simulation. You're completely free. There's no worries, there's no time, there's no nothing. If they go into that state of trust, the state of trust, not just the thought of trust, if they can go in fully trusting themselves and allow the breath work to do what it's got to do, it will take them to a place that's what they're thinking in their mind, but they can actually go to that place probably. So it's they almost get to go in there and live that, a separation between the human body but into this unknown world, that you don't even think is possible. And that's people go what the fuck, that sounds like you're taking drugs. And it probably can get you to those experiences. We've had people say it's more a profound experience than DMT or ayahuasca. Now people are using a plant medicine to get there quicker, but we can get you there in 90 minutes, through that deep session. If you fully trust and allow that breath work to do what it's got to do, with the music and the experience that we provide in the coaching, the visualizations, everything like that.
So for somebody that's never heard or seen anything what he's doing, what's the sort of, how would you describe what they are? They might have heard of ayahuasca, they might have heard of DMT. plant medicine is giving you that, tuning into your consciousness rather than being encapsulated in your meat suit, for lack of a better word. And what you're able to do is provide an experience where they can do that without doing it via plant medicine. So when they come to one of your events, what is it that they're doing?
So the actual...
Are you getting in a pool? Is it a case of like you're doing a bit of yoga? What is it you're doing?
So what we do is that's what we say, the experience, right? We show up, we'll do an intro. We've kind of mirrored our sessions, like one's at the other end of Fife and one's in Stirling. One's at the start of the month, one's kind of like 3 weeks into the month, so we constantly have this rotating, right? So there's going to be like 4 weeks alternating between each Garden of Life and Eden Springs. But we looked at that in terms of symmetry, like we copy the same model and the same experience. Start off with a nature walk, silence nature walk, you're asked 3 kind of questions on the way through. Maybe why you're here, maybe what you want to let go of, maybe what do you actually like want to gain out of this. Like, we just ask questions, we stop them, kind of walks, maybe a 30-minute walk through nature. When we arrive, we do some cold water exposure. The reason why we put that in first is we want to disrupt any thought patterns, right? People are going to be nervous, they're going to be on edge. If we can get you in there and break your mind in a couple of minutes in the ice, we've disrupted the thought patterns already. As soon as you overcome that and they feel that safety and that like confinement of the ice, and they actually come out of it being like, oh, that was amazing, I loved that. Yeah. So already we've started that safety in them, right? They're not overthinking, they're not panicking, they're maybe already overthinking, but we've disrupted it with the ice. So if we can do that and you can get through the ice, then you're going to get through the hard stuff, which is the breath work. Added in the cha-cha slide the other event, so that was a wee we got them all moving, just take them out of their discomfort again, right? Some people didn't like dancing, me too. Like, I'm like the awkward uncle at a wedding, so there's me shuffling along the cha-cha slide, then we get them in the tent, and then we get cacao. Cacao's like more an ancestral, like kind of medicine that they use to open up the heart space, to connect with your heart or your emotions. It's like this hot chocolate drink, not as sweet. It's in the rawest form of like cacao, the cacao bean, so it's almost like the rawest form of chocolate before it's actually refined into the sugared chocolate. We brew that, you set that with intention when you're making it, so whatever your intention is to making that, you make it with spices, etc., and then you make this kind of nice warm drink. So we drink that before the meditation, and then we take them into the 9D with the headphones, which is a polyphonic soundscape. We make all the music, making a multi-dimensional sound experience, so sounds coming through all these different directions. When we're taking them through the meditation, it's usually to connect with their heart space, because that cacao is going to really heighten that, and when they can really connect into that rather than thinking with the mind, they can start to think from the heart. And there's so many people.
So see for people that like, there's going to be a lot of people out there that this is a tall order for them. So
I know.
What do you, when you say think for the heart space? Because what I always notice is, see when you see ultra high performers, because everybody's looking for the ultra performance because they want the ultra results, whatever that may be. The ultra performers will go and find the absolute edges of performance for anywhere, and they'll do these types of things. And most people will get stuck because they go, it's a bit fluffy.
Aye. No, I've got
and these high performers will go out and they'll find the little techniques that have been known in Buddhist traditions and for millennia, and it's all these little examples of techniques, breath work, connecting to your energy. And I'll use the example. My favorite example is if an alien landed here and it's like, hey, show me around your planet. You've got to take them round. You go into a room, the people in the room have just had an argument. You can tell straight away. So you say, look, we'll come back later on. The alien says to you, says, what happened there? So they've had an argument. He's got a bit of sort of unknown look. How do you know? So you can just tell. But how can you tell? So you just pick up on the energy.
Feel the energy.
You can feel the energy, you can feel the tension in there. You can sense what's going on. And most people will get that. And it's not a million miles away from, you can pick up and detect energy, and you're also an energy generator. You can generate that energy. But they're so close together in terms of where they are and in our experience, but people find them miles apart.
So, I've got a good thing on that. Whereas, why do people shower each other when they've been in this relationship? Like, I mean, in their face, like bawling, but you think like they love each other, right? Or like there's this thing, and they're not shouting at each other because it's hatred. It's like what they're not recognizing is that their hearts are so far away, like so distant apart from each other. That's what's shouting, because it's so distant, and they can't admit that truth. Yet someone who is so in love with each other, they can sit in a room and not speak a word, yet you can feel like 1,000 emotions coming through that room.
Or when they make love, whisper.
It's like that, and that for me is like, are you thinking for the heart space, or are you thinking for here? Because an argument will start in here, the cascade of the trigger or what's poking you, right? But when those hearts become so distant, man, it's so broken. It's finding that connection and bringing it close again, because that once felt like home, right? And it's like, and that's what a lot of people didn't really feel for a heart space, I think, and it's kind of similar to that.
Yeah,
what you're saying with the argument.
What's if you were to say to someone, feeling from the heart, what's it like?
I found it super hard, and this is why I'm speaking about it, because for years I was shut off just due to everything I grew up around. I shut that off. I was numb. I never knew what it was. Like, somebody say, think for your heart, and I'm like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how do you think for your heart? Your heart just pumps, right? And it's like, nah, when you start to connect with how does your body actually feel? How many people sit there and take 5 minutes out of their day and try and just go into this space, right, where you shut the mind down, and imagine you're looking in on yourself in that room, and you reflect back on your week, and you look at yourself, what you done, how you showed up, how you presented yourself every single day, to your wife, to your kids, to the people at work. Are you proud of that person? And people, they go, actually, I've never really thought about that. So how many times can you start to do that in a day, where you drop in and be so spatial aware of what's around you, not just you, because we put the blinkers on, right? Put these blinkers on and we just do the same shit, like what we're talking about. But how many times you actually disrupting your thought pattern and sitting there and being like, actually, how did I make that person feel? Or how did I show up for that person? Or how did I actually show up for myself? So like, when you start to then go into yourself, you start getting the answers. What am I feeling? And sometimes I used to sit there and I'm like nothing. I remember saying to this dude, I done a breathwork session with him, and he says, sit there and like think for your heart. And I went, what are you feeling around there? And I was like, I opened my eyes and I went, bro, I'm going to be honest with you, like blackness. And he went, interesting. And he's like, go again, like think deeper. And I was like, nothing, mate, like fucking, I can't feel anything. I don't know what you mean. I'm probably doing it wrong. So you're not doing it wrong. He's, I can relate to you. And he's a dude it's Bo from Australia. He used to be in a bikers club, Harley, the strippers, the titty bars. He ran all them, sold the drugs, became breathwork. He was like, bro, I was so fucking numb for years and years and years until I met Kirsty. She taught me to like connect with myself and go deeper. And he's like, you're so numb, you're so shut off to this environment, you're conditioned into just setting those rule sets up where you wake up, you do the same shit every single day, right? You're just in this pattern, just blowing on with your blinkers on. But the more you start connecting with that, you do start to feel a sensation around there. Then I started being like, oh, it actually feels quite nice. I'm starting to feel my heartbeat coming through. It's like for fucking years, I never thought I had a heartbeat. And then I was like, used to sit there and I'd meditate, try and go back into my heart space. How's my body feeling? And I used to just start to feel like this warm fuzziness, man. And it's like that feeling, like that's when you start to think for your heart space. So meditation's always usually about visualization, right? Like, can you see yourself in a moment that you want? Can you manifest into that? How does it look? How does it feel? What can you smell? And sometimes I struggle to see that clear image. But as soon as I go into my heart space and I start to feel that, you can feel it. It's almost like you radiate it out. And it's almost like when you go over that hill in your car and you get that wee butterfly feeling. And like that kind of radiates out and you feel it. And the deeper you go into that, it's like you can almost radiate it further and further and further. I'm sure it was Joe Dispenza says we can radiate up to like
6 feet.
Like something
energy is an energy.
But your heart in total can like go so many miles. And that blew my fucking mind. He was like, I mean, like this was a good I'm sure it was like over 50 odd miles. So I was like working it out. Someone down in England can feel like my heart, if I really radiate that out for my heart space, I can connect with that person. And then I remember one time, that was like my ex, when I was so connected with, she was down in Cheshire. She messaged me and she says, what's up with you? And I went, what do you mean? She was like, I don't know, I've got this feeling coming from me. And I was lying there thinking about her, just constantly. And I was getting this butterfly feeling, like this feeling of like, I want her here, I miss her, like when she's down there, like, and I was radiating this feeling, man, and she could sense that without me even messaging. And that kind of blew my mind a wee bit. And I was like, we're just in a society of like a conditioned linear movement. Like where we just move from A to B, right? I was saying to you earlier, like I call it the 3 C's. Control, consumption, competition. And what's the end outcome of them is just satisfaction. That is, you would say we like consumption for satisfaction, right? We buy things for pleasure, bit of satisfaction. Control factor, whether it's controlling what you do or in your relationship or your family. There's satisfaction in that because you think you've got it in order and you're telling your brain that like we've got our shit together. And then like we've got the competition. We tend to compete to be the best, right? We always want to be the best version of us or be the best at what we do, or there's some sort of satisfaction for that, like, oh, that dude recognises me, like, I'll get the titty flex at the gym, like, oh, there's a bit of competition there, but I'll take the best, like, gym stuff and I'll look the best, or you invest into all these sports stuff or whatever, it can be anything. But that outcome is always satisfaction, and we've been programmed into this. At the end of the day, that's what we think at the end outcome, satisfaction, and that's what we're looking for. And for me, life's not that, man. Like, you need to take that away. Everything starts with, like, when you least expect it, the unknown, because that's when consciousness evolves. Consciousness comes from when there is no space and time, right? If you look at the unified field of the universe or whatever, where we came from, the source, or that's just energy. So I always say, like, the universe is waiting on humans to think because it's an empty canvas every single day. And it's waiting on us to think, to create. It's constantly blank canvas every day. And it's our thoughts that we pull for the invisible energy or whatever you want to call it. And we evolve those two forces, which is magnetism and electric, right? It's an electrical stimulant that comes inside of you. That feeling, that's an electrical stimulant in the brain. To create that hardwired program, that needs to meet the threshold of the magnetism. Something that can be control, competition, solid, what we see as like gratification, or we're holding on to it, fear, trauma, whatever it is. And that moment when we can descend that and that starts to descend and we get this electrical stimulant or something inside of us, we don't know what it is, only when it meets the threshold it can connect with consciousness. And consciousness, when that connection, when it meets there, that's when we create that synapse in the brain and we create a new neural pathway. But it has to be greater than what the actual magnetism is that we're thinking of at that time. And that's why a lot of people fail when they try and move forward. They don't think they're good enough, or they do the same shit and they get pulled back. Like you says, it's like that gratification where they put a wee bit of grit in there and then they find it tough. Like because your body only knows survivable moments, right? It doesn't know what that new version of you is. So it holds on to that magnetism constantly. That thought, that feeling, that old version of you, that's all it knows. Doesn't know the difference between thought and a real life. It just knows that feeling. It's conservation, energy, it's physics. Conservation is just set on one thing and your energy just goes into that one thing. That's conservation, right?
What's your point of focus?
That's it. And what's happening in our mind all the time? We've got, 70,000 thoughts a day? So imagine the amount of energy and focus and conservation that's in your brain that's getting just, the subconscious is just holding on to all that energy constantly. Am I doing this right? Am I doing it good enough? Am I doing that? Like, is this the right thing? You're having this mental battle, like all your energy's up in here. So can we take that energy and drop it out the head space and then into the heart space? Mm-hmm. Because we're so disconnected from here.
So what I've seen over the years is I've seen people that have been materially driven. You know, it's a reductionist world. We're just, you know, a chemical mixture that's created this human being. There's nothing more, nothing less. We run around and we do things and then we die. And the real hungry, you know, say the real hungry materialists in terms of measurable success, material items, wealth and so on, they generally are hungry from the outset, and they tend to just not think much more than that because they're looking for a result.
Yeah.
Along the way, what tends to happen is you get a couple of subcategories. You get somebody who goes along and they want an edge. So they start looking into like esoteric knowledge and can we generate a result? Can we manifest things? Is the law of attraction a thing? And they're usually doing that initially for an edge because they've hit this sort of glass ceiling of, well, the reductionist idea is that I'm just a meat suit. But is there anything more?
Yeah.
They'll ask that question, is there anything more?
Yeah.
And it usually sets off what they start out with and what it ends up doesn't be the same. It's not the same because they go into it for an edge and then end up essentially falling down the rabbit hole.
Lost, that's it.
The next one is somebody that's at odds with what they're doing. So they generally are looking to find they're doing something for a materialistic result, but they lack any sort of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And it's usually that they're out of harmony, they're out of sync. So what they really feel it would be fulfilling, they're not actually doing, but it's got a material success. It's got a measure that they can measure it by: growth of a business, growth of a portfolio, growth of bank account, growth of status, these types of things. And the last one you get is somebody who has completely lost their way. They've went so far down the path of the materialistic route, they're so lost.
Yeah.
They've got no sense of their own identity. They've got no idea if they've been working for so long. They don't even know if it was worth it. And they feel lost and they go looking for something. They generally, all three of them will brush up on this sort of, is there more? Is there more out there? And the third thing that most people struggle to square away with is some of this stuff is being indoctrinated into Western society not to believe any of this. If you look at Eastern traditions, you generally, it'll be an easier pathway to go and study and have a less dogmatic view of it. So there's not a stigma or a dogma around exploring these things. And when you do a lot of research into occulted knowledge, you generally find that there's the commonality between the Eastern traditions, these practices, people who are initially wanting to get an edge, and extremely successful people in many measures. There's a commonality in that these sorts of where you put your intention, what you focus on, how you can generate your results, ability to see opportunities, the fulfillment is in trying to ask yourself what it is that would make you happy versus what you believe society wants to make you happy. And also that as almost as a byproduct has a secondary effect, which is you need to look within. Like you need to do your internal housework. Your internal housework is, am I doing really what I want? Am I doing any good? Am I providing anything that I can pass on to someone that's got value? And you need to do that housekeeping exercise. And it's funny how you see all these different sorts of people. And I guess what I was thinking about when I was reading through your sort of brief that you'd sent about what is the oxygen experience. The question I asked myself was, who's this for? Like who is this for? And I was trying to think of who it wouldn't be for, because the list of who it would be for, it would be quite difficult because I don't think it's pinned to any one particular group of people. I think that there's many people with many different things going on in their life that this is probably a good, a good place to stop by. It's like you're on a long journey, right? Life's like a long journey, and there's a services at the road. And you've not seen anything like that for ages, and you don't go into the service station. It's one group of people. There's all the different types, and they're all in there for a variety of different reasons, but they've popped in. And I think more now in this time that we're in, we've seen mainstream media, and a lot of people are maybe not as enamored by it as they once were. We've seen that the indoctrination of society isn't really making people fulfilled, and life's a contradiction, right? We need to be able to transact with each other and share, but we need to do it in a certain way. But we also want to feel fulfilled. We need to have some degree of success, because if you're successful, then you can do the things that are more fulfilling. And it's all these sorts of little dichotomies that we face all the time, and that we need to balance the one with the other. I don't think you can be too. If you go to these events, you see a majority of people are, they're great, and you'll find something in common with them. And you're going to have the people outside where you go, I don't really have it. You seem completely bonkers to me. And maybe that's a bit of
there's a bit of control there, right? One of the C's.
Yeah, and this is the thing. They're so far away from where you're at. The vibration, if you like, their frequencies. Like you just go, we're miles away from you. Maybe they're further on. I don't know. Maybe they're further on than what I would think. But what you generally find is you get to this point where you go, this actually fits quite a lot of people, because you can have the lost soul that's trying to find themselves. You can have somebody that's reached their proverbial glass ceiling and they're looking to break through. You've got the curious people that, as a kid, were told, hey, look, this is it and that's it. But their curiosity gets the better of them and they want to go and have a look. They want to see what's out there. Maybe you've got somebody who's stuck, who says, look, you know, I've chased this material dream, and I don't think it's for me. I think it takes a lot for somebody to go, hey, look, I've actually been at this for 10 years and I don't think it was I don't think I went the right way. Or I'm going to let people down with this next decision I'm going to make. These are the tough decisions, and a lot of people will take the path of least resistance. And I would say that in culture today, from what we can observe, there's a lot of toughness that needs to be brought back in. And I don't mean tough as in, hey, you know, drill sergeant, you should be doing this. It's hey, you can be strong and that's okay. That's not a bad word. You can be tough and you can make the hard decisions, and that's not a bad word. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that they maybe... I speak to a lot of people and I hear a lot about, you know, it seems to be the currency. You're a victim. If you knew what I'd been through...
So that's where I want to touch up on is the reason why people are still... We still find it a little bit hard to... We want to reach the masses. Like you said, it's open to so many people. We don't have like one niche. And I feel there's a lot of people out there who just define themselves to one niche. Women only, men only, broken men, whatever. Now, my task is when I first started Oxygen Up, and then we came together like Grant and Paul and that. It's like, we want this to appeal to the masses, right? Because Paul wasn't really a believer in it. He was like, what's all this shit? Changed his life. When we use this word transformation, it's a buzzword that gets passed about all the time. And what my goal is like that process I was talking about is the satisfaction. Can we disrupt those 3 C's to create that moment of just unknown? But that came from within you during that session. You don't even know what the fuck it was. But at that moment, we managed to create enough electrical stimulant in you that created a charge that also let the barriers down, or those magnetism, those 3 C's, whatever it was, it dropped the wall on that to allow that to descend and that electrical to like ascend inside of you. So that feeling, that heart space, whatever it was, in that moment, you were doing the work. In that moment, something connected there for you. That's the transformation process, because that's when true connection comes with consciousness. And that's what transformation is. Energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed. So what's happening in there is that electrical stimulant has been greater than the force that it was, which was the magnetism, the barriers in the mind, the lack of feeling good enough or whatever, or this isn't for me, the ego, the control starts to just dissolve. And when we allow that to dissolve and to meet the threshold, that's when the transformation really occurs. There's not many people that can actually define what transformation is. They like to use the buzzword of transformation. Now, what we want to appeal is, can we transform your life? But not in terms of the buzzword. Can we create something that transforms you into what you were stuck in and you felt like you couldn't disrupt? Or you've tried everything, the affirmations, the positive speaking, whatever. It's not worked for you. We're doing it on a physical level. We're letting you feel it again. And we're letting you process that feeling within you. It's almost like igniting that amber inside you, right? And then we didn't tell you what that's going to be. Only you will know that feeling and you know what it is. And then people come out of that and it's like, they tell you like weeks later, thank you so much. Like, just something inside of me told me I spoke to my higher self, or it was like this voice was speaking to me, or whatever. Because we're taking you at the physical body and out of here. And then we're taking you way above and you're connecting into that energy, which is quantum physics, mate. You can't define that. It's everything that's around you, right? But that electrical stimulant, when we got that past the threshold, that then became magnetism. So you've now believed in it enough that it's created that magnetic force to create all those photons and particles to start to form. And that thought that then turned in from an emotion to a thought, the idea is now created as something in someone's mind now. And now they're like thinking like, actually, this could be something. That could be me. And then they then start to see and believe. So it's that's what we're trying to ignite in people. We're not trying to like do anything other than woo it. We just want that spark to kind of...
We live it, because it's happened to both of us.
Yeah.
Through doing the same process.
Like, so that, I mean, I still think that's a heavy lift for most people, and you're in it. So I think that it might be difficult because when you're living and breathing it every day, it seems easy. It's a bit like somebody saying to me, can you analyse that, your business or stock or share? It's second nature to me, but to them it might as well be, hieroglyphics. They just go, look, I don't get what that is. So like, let me ask you, you've had a lot of people come by. What's the type of, give us some examples of somebody that comes in for a particular reason, and then what happens afterwards?
Well, I don't think anyone actually comes to us like for a particular thing. It's almost sometimes curiosity, or they will see what we've been doing on social media, or they will hear about it. And yeah, some of the posts that we've put up recently, they get a lot of traction because of the emotional release on them, which is strange. You know, it's the world we live in that they see someone crying or screaming out or hurting, and they like it. But then we'll put on the ones where they're joyous and there's fun and there's lots of happy shit happening, and nobody likes it or shares it.
It's that idea of healing. I mean, a lot of people are looking to heal something.
So we get a lot of comments on that saying, "Oh, well, I need this in my life, and how can I come along?" So they come along because of what they've seen or heard.
And they just want to put headphones on and scream.
Well, that's the thing. So Reece will talk you through the soundscapes, because the soundscapes are a massive part of it. Coming along and doing the session, the music and the breath work will take you there. And we don't really have to push that hard to get you where you need to be.
I've experienced this, and I mean without the intent of experiencing it, right?
Exactly.
I am this ultimate skeptic. I am the one that goes,
we're creating that experience.
This isn't going to work.
Yeah. Okay, we're creating the environment, safe environment. It's calming, it's relaxing. It's then we introduce the soundscape and the subliminal messaging and the transient hypofrontality. The breath work is basically reducing the blood flow to the brain. So the music works in line with that. And Reece will explain the soundscape and the light spectrum. He'll explain that better than I can. But we don't actually have to do that much work when you're there.
Well, I mean, I've had this where I was meditating. My only intent was to stop. My brain thought process was. Someone said to me, "Have you ever tried meditation?" I says, "Nah." It's like, listen, I'm hardcore. I like to go as hard as possible. I'm completely driven, highly motivated, highly tuned. Do I want to slow myself down? Absolutely not. And says, the next question was, how many thoughts do you think you have in a minute? Yeah. Like 5, 10? I didn't think so. I thought 5 or 10. Yeah. Says, well, you need to try meditate. And I'm like, okay, what would I get out of it? Because it's just, what's in it for me? What's the result? What's the benefit? So just purely try it to see if your number's in the ballpark. So, right, okay. Right. So set headphones on, pick some meditation music. If you looked at an internet cable and you could look through it like that and you could see the amount of data that was going through, that was like my mind. Yeah. And there was that instant recognition of, oh, I see what you mean. And then through the process of trying to get myself to, the traditional one, when you meditate, focus on your breath and out. And then before you know it, you're not actually concentrating on the in and out.
Rhythm.
It's just there. And then by coincidence, I'd picked a particular kind of meditation music and put it on. And something happened. It felt like I was in between when you're awake and when you're asleep, and starting to see colours, and not as in I'm imagining the colours or not that I've thought about the colours or they were there.
Yeah.
And the inner skeptic's a bit like, oh, wait, now that's happening. Wait, we've knocked on the door of something and I didn't know that was there and what's going on. And so much so the missus had asked, she says, how was your meditation? I was in two minds whether to mention it. Says, and I said, look, this is what I says, how did it feel? And I says, when just before you're about to nod off to sleep, but you're still awake and it's in between there somewhere. Says it felt like colours are starting to shape round and they're changing and I still felt awkward explaining it at the time because I was the one that would be like, nah, no way.
Until you see it.
And it was by accident. And that's when I thought, and it's probably that dogged determination of, you give me a target and I'll hit it. You give me an objective, I'll get there. You give me something to do, I'll execute on it. So that whole, see how many thoughts you have as your number in the ballpark. And I'm like, couldn't believe it. And that then set off the curiosity of the young kid where you go, what is this? Why would people do it? Why would they spend time? Why is some of the best people in the world doing this thing? And then that's when you go, Oh.
Where did that come from within, right? So if we go back to that process, what I was talking about, magnetism and electricity, that electrical stimulant that started was something within you that started that, and it allowed comfort and safety for you to drop out of that wall that was holding on to everything that was just solid form to what we see in a 3D world or the 3D reality. And when you let that go and you let that barrier down and you let that dissolve, that electrical stimulant is rising up in you, which you said it's the colours or whatever, this place of the unknown, right? We've never been there, but now you're starting to be like, all right, fucking hell, aye, that actually is there. That was the transverse of the energy then. That was the start of the transformation because you've met the threshold. You allowed the barrier to come down to the point where your mind just allowed you access into the subconscious. 80% of that, 90% of that we didn't even use.
But the interesting thing at the time is I remember thinking back at it and I thought to myself, I'm running through a checklist post event, and I wasn't running a checklist at the time of the event. And that was really telling to me because something was normal service had been disconnected, and that what am I checking afterwards? I'm checking, right, did I imagine that? Or was it asleep or was that imagined? Was it a dream? Was I thinking about this? But it doesn't appear, I'm running through these sort of yes, no, true, false. And it was only after the event. At the time, it was just sort of, like if you said to a kid, come on, I'm going to show you something, just in complete wonder.
Yeah.
And that was how it felt. It was like, if somebody says, here's something over here, check out these colours.
The unknown.
It was there. I didn't know. I didn't know you put on music and you would be transforming. Like the point where I came out when I was sort of like, I'm not really sure what had happened.
Yeah.
But it was enough that I remembered going, that was not what I had anticipated. And I can't imagine what it's like, when I was looking through your brief and all the sorts of things. So breathing and the music, the frequency was a particular thing that I'd done. I can't imagine if you added, the cold water therapy, the meditation, you mentioned something else about the light.
Yeah, so the visible light spectrum. So in ways for probably people to understand it, like my fucking brain works in like I want to go like into the depths of everything, right? I try and look at like how you look at the world, like how people are looking at a conditioned world, and then I go into that thought of like, was there a part of me that like looks at the world completely different? And that's why I always felt like, man, I didn't fucking belong here. And still to this day, sometimes I feel like that. I find it really hard to blend in, just the way my mind works, and I'm like, I feel like fucking disease here sometimes. Like I feel like I didn't fit in, and I feel like I'm a fucking alien, right? Like that, making all jokes aside. But what does make sense to me is if we go back way before like your mother tongue English language, can you imagine what that looked like or what it was? How did we communicate? How did we feel? Everything comes from a vibrational level, right? Everything's vibrating around you. So what we're not looking at is vibrating when we've not got our sight on it. Only when we put our focus on it, it looks solid. And that's the part that blows people's minds, because when we look into the depths of atoms, they're constantly vibrating and moving. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're at the side of you like, look at me, I'm moving. And you look at it and it's like, oh, I'm still. Because that's how our eyes see things. We see the atoms, we see everything, we magnetize it, we make it solid form into a 3D world, yet everything's moving. So if you start then looking at vibration, we only see up to like ultraviolet and the visible light spectrum. So if you look at the actual, the light spectrum, and the colours from red to violet, like delta being like the longest brainwave, but it's like the frequencies actually like, it's the slowest frequency, so it's moving kind of like this, right? But it's the longest one, so how it's going to sound is like, because it's super stretched and it's long, it's going to be like singing bowls, groans, chants, all this kind of, why did you think they had back in the day, vibration, right? It was all vibrational tones. But back in Mongolian throat singers and all of them times, cavemen, it was chanting, it was like groans and tones. Our body recognises tones and vibration. That's the true music it's built into us and the true language. So when you start looking beyond music in terms of instruments and things like that, can you then feel what that's doing to your brainwave structure? How is that altering you through each brainwave? It's because it's taking you up and down brainwaves, right? If we just jump you into a fucking soundscape, start you off with singing bowls and then put fucking Slipknot on, you're going to be like, what the fuck, that's chaos. Like, because you went for one end, jumped to right here, right? And you're going to be like, your brain recognises that. Take Slipknot out of the occasion. That sounds like chaos. Your brain knows that's chaos. So we take you through the visible light spectrum, which is red to violet, like the rainbow. Then you look at everything in terms of even primary colours at school. When we had our primary and secondary colours, all that is the same as the rainbow, right? That's all we see in terms of brain waves as well. Our brainwave mimics the same as that. Chakras, do you know what they are in the body? What people talk about the chakras, the red, the orange, the yellow, moving up.
You mean in terms of colours?
Yeah, and then so you got the coloured chakras. I like to call them an energy vortex, because if we look at it, it's not just a colour block. It's just like that vortex. It's two like circles in a 4D, 5D world. It's kind of like this, what's the actual terminology? There's a vortex, that's what they call it. It kind of looks like that.
Torus field.
That's the one. So that's kind of what's in us. It's rotating, and it's kind of creating that multi-dimensional rotation. But they're also attuned to a key note, right? They're going to be a vibrational tone. So then we look at the key notes, the majors of music, C, D, E, F, G. That's what we move up from, C, D, E, F, G, all the way up. So to that point, we now look at music and colour. So when I'm looking at colour, I run it through a software that's going to group up and bunch that one song or that, whatever it's made up of, the components of the instruments or singing, vocals, whatever. And I'm going to look at the major colours in that song and then start to then put that into the keys, the same as the chakras. I'll have a folder of like red, like all red, all the songs, tonalities, singing bowls, deep groans, like universal sounds, all these kind of things. And that's going to start me in the key of C, and I'm going to put them all in a key of C. Because now that's going to start here. What is that? That's the birth and the centre of everything, right? The red. We start from the red. We always start from there. And then we work our way up. The Kundalini rising, that's what they say. The serpent rises from the root chakra. It's the birth. It's the beginning of everything. So we take someone out of a linear moving brainwave state of a busy, chaotic life that we're just thinking, doing the same shit. They're moving on this linear movement, right? Can we take them out of that linear movement, disrupt their thought pattern, put them into a laid position with their eyes closed? What's that going to start? It's going to start the process of mirrored sleep, right? Mirrored neurons. Your body's like, oh, well, I'm lying down here with my eyes shut. Are we sleeping? So you go into that lucid state now. You're awake, but you're not asleep. So now you're starting to go through a process of different brainwave states. We've taken you a brainwave state that you're just constantly moving from here to here, satisfaction, bring you down here, disrupt that. Now we're starting the possibility of what can be the unknown, right? Then we start with sound. We start moving you through here. Even when you're laid down with your eyes closed, because you feel like you're sleeping, it's starting regeneration, it's starting healing naturally your body. But now we're starting safety. Where did you start? In the womb, laid down, right? Inside your mother's womb. You might have been upside down. But for a majority of people, we're lay, that's where we start. So we're starting people from that same thing. It's like a rebirthing process. So we move you through that colour and tonalities of every song, every tone, every instrument. And we build it, and build it, and build it, all the way up to gamma, to the point where you do a breath hold. And then that's where you get that access to the subconscious, where we create the transient hypofrontality. We shut down the oxygen, which is the energy to the brain. That shuts the monkey mind down, and then it opens the door to the subconscious. And only then, that's when you get into that, like, that place where you're like, fuck. People are like, I don't know, they come back with all these stories, and you're like, holy shit, I wish I was on that journey with you. But they'll also say to you, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. They came there not even knowing that was going to happen. But there was something that brought them along there, and there was also a perfect moment of that unknown where they felt safety, right? They felt that point of, I'm going into the feeling of trust, not the thought of trust. And only when they surrendered and allowed the breath and the music to move through them, that's when it started the moment of the transversing of the energy within them to bring down those barriers to create the transformation. And that's constantly just how we replicate everything in terms of our session like that.
So have you ever had anybody that's been deeply sceptical that's came along?
Yeah, we get it every week. We get them every time, every event.
Exactly. I'm thinking here, there's people, there's actually listeners that will really toil with us. And I'm mischievous, right? I would buy them, I would throw them under the bus. I would make sure they would go somewhere. There's been people I've done this to where I know that this is far away from what they can conceive. And just out of sheer mischief, I'll go like, yeah, I should definitely do it. And I'm sure you've maybe had them. What's it like when they come along?
So you'll get those ones, you always get them, right? We can't please everybody, but we're trying to make that masses, I think, is like, you'll get the person who goes, it's all right. It's all right. But they've also been in that magnetism role where they've got the element of control that it's so dominant in their brain and it's taking up all their power, all their energy, right? Because wherever energy is, that's like, it's going to flow to that, right? Wherever it goes. So because they're putting so much conservation to their mind of control, they do not trust themselves. And that person will naturally get there. But I always say to them, it will come in time. Come back and maybe another time. You cannot inflict it on something, you cannot push them there. Whereas what I see in this new age is everybody's trying to get them to do that scream release. Everybody's trying to get them to break out in tears. And that person might not need that. That person can lie there in silence and look like he's not even breathing. And then he wakes up and he tells you he's had the best fucking trip of his life. And you're like, dude, I thought you weren't even breathing through that. And he was like, man, I was gone. I was in this place. So, but this is what everybody's doing, and they're damaging people because they're extremists, right? They're inflicting what they like on them on other people. And I'm trying to come from that because I'm quite an extremist. But I'm also trying to come from a point of like, how do you make that fit everybody? But that fits everybody only when they trust themselves. Like truly, if you can just sit into that full-on trust, can anybody admit that to themselves, that they fully trust themselves? People will be like, I trust myself. Nah, mate, no you don't. Like, as soon as I put the headphones on you and tell you to breathe, I can see you peeking the eye open. Yep. Do you trust yourself? Even I didn't when I first done it, man. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was lying there and I was like, what? Wait, no, I'm still on the floor. I felt like I was fucking floating. Like, I thought I was in another universe, mate. Yep. And I opened my eyes to see if this shit is real. And I genuinely thought I'd left my body. And then I was like, I'm still here. How is that possible?
So the festival that you guys were at was the Creanique Festival. And I was driving to Oban at the time. And my missus had said, look, do you fancy this? So there was... she was running through the list of things that were on at the festival. I was like, yeah, it sounds great. Vanishingly little attention here. Right. And I mean, I'm doing my bit. As any successfully married man would do. You just go along with it, right? You're like, that sounds great. And I can't remember what she said. She said something like, do you really want to go? And I was like, yeah, it sounds good. And I thought that was my opportunity because I thought of her friend who was the one you would probably want to throw under the bus. And she's a lovely woman. Like, really, really great woman. But any opportunity I would take to throw her under the bus. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. I was like, look, you girls need to get some time to yourselves. You need to get off duty. You need to be in mummy duty. And I remember it was like the glass walk. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not walking on broken glass. You must have lost your mind. Like, I've smashed plenty of things. I've got kids. And dogs, Lego and dog chews.
So there was Lego there as well.
On a rug. I'm like, never have I stood in a bit of Lego and I've pulled glass out my hand. Never have I thought, could they be smashing this up or getting a carpet of it? Yeah. Have you lost the place? So I was like, I said, look, you lasses need time to yourselves. You just need to get off mummy duty and, just go and be yourselves. This would be great for you to do. Bearing in mind that my missus is she's more of the curious, open-minded type, and her pal's a wee bit more kind of. She's more of on the sceptical end.
Yeah.
I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to get her into one of these festivals. See, when she told me her experience of the 9D breathwork, she says, I felt like I was off the ground, like I was levitating, and this is for the cynic. The skeptic.
But the thing is,
she says, I actually had to open my eyes and make sure I was not in the air. She said, I thought it was some trick, like they'd put a harness onto me or something.
Derek was lifting him up in the chair.
She says, I was something. She said, I actually had to check that I was not being lifted into the air.
So, Gio, this is the response we get from every cynic that comes in and does it. And it's only 20 minutes. Like, we do a breath and ice once a week, once every 2 weeks, every second week in Dundee and Stirling. And that's just light breath work. It's not even the transformational breath work, but it's the soundscape. And it's just a light Wim Hof style breath work. And I've had cynics come up, like, just come to try it out. Completely not interested. They're just coming to try it out. But by the time they come out of the soundscape, it's the exact same response that we get from them. Like, what the fuck just happened to me? I felt like that floor was molded for me. I felt like I was floating. I seen these colours. Some people are also... they're unsure. So they come to you once everybody's away and they're like, this just happened. Is that real? Is that meant to happen? You're like, yeah, some people see different things, some people feel different things, but yeah, everybody has an experience. I've never done one yet, and people have been like, shit.
Well, I'm coming along to your next one because after I'd heard the old skeptic say that she was raising and levitating above the floor, I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. Now, as much as walking on Lego and glass is appealing, and I would love to try it, and I will try it, but the levitating, that
Sounds
was the
a bit
hook.
more appealing, right?
I'm in, and mainly because I did experience the breath work, and I've brushed up against people that are looking to get that edge, and they've ended up. It's all around understanding the inner world. It's getting a better handle on energy. It's understanding what powers lie within. And I think what you're doing is great. It's been fascinating to find out how you two got here, because the two, it's amazing how paths cross, right?
Yeah.
You look at the stories, like these guys are never going to cross paths ever. It's completely fascinating that.
I suppose we never even got to that, did we?
I think we got as far as the pot noodle.
The pot noodle. that was a fucking mad trip around that place, man. Couldn't speak a word of Chinese. That was fun.
Learning on the job.
I think kind of ended up there, mate. It was one of the ones, man. I was in Thailand, and next time I end up in Taiwan, where a random dude fares you. Again, as you do, man. Fuck it.
It's high volatility, man. You're high volatility.
I know, mate. I float about it, and I just like, my mate says to me the other day, where he's staying, I was like, Stirling? I mean, who, eh? I met this dude like the other year, and we kind of bumped in, crossed paths unexpectedly today, man. That's a whole other trip as well. We met under these trees, started pissing down, we ran under the trees. I was with this, if you want to call her a witch, like one of they kind of people. It's like, she's like, oh, there's runes on that tree, ancient Viking runes. And I was like, all right, that's the unknown one. And then it's got your initials. I was like, fuck, so it does. It was like RS caved into this tree. I was like, oh, pretty cool. Anyway, that was like coincidence. We walk out and we bump into Paul, who was a dude I met at the time. We're just blathering away. Anyway, got blathering, he was talking about doing this meditation trip. And I was like, oh, I do breathwork, man, I'll get you to that place. He's like, mate, I've been looking for this for ages. I was just telling him. He'd been on a walk, he wasn't in a good place, blah, blah, blah. He comes to one of my events, blew his mind, he's still dazed. We went for a coffee. He's like, mate, I'm not back in my body, I didn't think. And I was like, you'll get there, man, it just takes time. He's like, I'm still speechless. Anyway, he comes to another one, wasn't in a good place. He comes along to Mantra, that was the one when I met Grant too. And they were at that session, and he was like, oh mate, dude, you changed my fucking life for me, man. He was like, kind of at that stage of mental breakdown. Corporate world as well, fucking high volume of stress, work stress, all that kind of stuff. Just a average dude, skeptical to all this. I'm like, come along to this males retreat, mate. And he's like, what the fuck is that, mate? He's like, I've only just came out on your breathwork session and it still didn't really care what's all about. Never mind chanting and doing men's work and staring in men's eyes and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, fuck it, I'll come along. But that was the day it changed his life. And what's like Grant's like, so there was a purpose to probably why I had to be there, and how David got me along to Mantra, like he had heard of the work I was doing. So I was doing something right, I guess, for once.
That's the thing. I mean, I've seen loads of guys from the city that go down and make obscene amounts of money, and their work rate's incredible, but they burn out after 5 years, and they're so lost. They end up coming to somewhere that they're looking for something, but in one hand they're bank account rich, but their fulfillment bank account
satisfaction's just burning out again, right?
It's just destroyed.
Try to find a happy medium, I suppose.
You need to exist in both worlds. What it's like is you've got two ships, and you need to have a foot in one and a foot in the other.
Yeah.
There's too much in one. It's like with the best will in the world.
You're going off track.
It's with the best will in the world. You can't go and fill up your car with spiritualism and this good energy, and your fourth chakra isn't going to top up your tank.
That's what
best
I
will in the world
all the time.
Right? So the best will in the world, you're not going to be able to do anything like that. And this is the thing with people that are skeptic. That's where they come out with. They hit out with this.
Yeah.
What you need to say is, like, just to a certain degree, that you're right. On the other side of that, what's the other extreme? You can have all the money in the world, and you can buy all the things in the world, but you might have alienated all your friends, all your family to get there, to have that ultimate desire, and now you have no one, and you can buy everything, but you've not got a friend. You've not got somebody that loves you. You've not got somebody that cares about you. You've not got somebody that will do anything for you, because you've went to one end of the world. You can buy anything you like, but you can't buy a friend because you know that connection, the same as the alien. That connection, it's gone. Nobody wants to have that with you, and you're so dead inside. You're so numb. You need to have a foot in both worlds. You need to find the balance, the harmony of existing in one and the other.
I think what people maybe don't realise is that, you know, because you've got maybe both feet in that world, you don't even know that other world exists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're so far down the route of a materialistic gain that they didn't even know that other one exists. And trying to get that balance is hard, because if you're not concentrating at all on the spiritual side or the well-being side, then it's difficult. So it's just getting an introduction to it.
So you were saying that how you used to met?
Yeah, so went to Mantra Holistic Support, is it? Mantra Holistic Support.
Men's work.
Men's work, yeah.
So like men's work sounds a bit, you know.
I know, man. I don't know how to explain it. So I sent you David's stuff.
I mean, like, just for the purposes of people, if somebody says men's work,
Here, I'll sum it up.
It's not getting
Like
on.
The first one we know, man, I'll sum this up. This is the moment me and Paul and I will laugh about it to this day. We're in there, and I'm still like, I didn't really come up men's work was either, but I knew a wee bit about the Sacred Sons there in America, and it was the same kind of work. And he's telling us about like, oh, we're going to go through the lover, the king, and all this stuff. And he's like, the Roman Empire had the strongest people, strongest army. And he was telling us about the Romans back in the day, like they had the strongest army because they were brothers. Like they seen themselves and they valued and worshipped the ground that they walked on, and they would fucking die for them on the front line. He was like, their women, they wouldn't sleep with their women, they would be the carrier of their seed. He says, whereas they kept their energy and they would fucking fuck the brothers. So he believes that putting his seed in the brother would give him energy to fight. And he went, and I'm standing there going, I'm in a yurt full of 30 randy men, probably.
And he was going to ask me to do something, eh?
And he was like, right, so next part is, and I was like, we're going to be in the human centipede here, man. Like, we're all just hanging at the back of every man, like looking over and gazing in their eyes. And I'm like, and then he's like, nah, I'm only joking, man. But what I'm getting with that is, it's like the brothers, the commitment, the dedication to. I was
careful
like,
what he cuts up here. Right?
I was like, holy shit, man. And
this will be edited for viral content, not for the true.
David laughs at it as well, man. And it's like, but the stuff David does is like the same again as what David does. Just, I'm not picking on his height here either. Just a small dude who's just like the most genuine soul you'll ever meet. Like when you're in his presence, it's just like he's like just this wee like gift of like, I kind of like a wee angel dust, man. He's like, you just feel so warm around him, and he's amazing at what he does. This little dude can crack open the hardest of men in a room, and you're like, how? Right. Just by speaking to them.
David's the guy that does
he does like the men's work, man.
And he owns the space as well. Like
it's,
everybody listens. It's like 20, 25 men in the yurt, and it's like he starts talking, and you're like, silence. You listen.
There's no one man powerful than the other, and that's what he says. It's like there's no applauding someone for like, he's like, it's silence. You just put your hand up and recognise him. I see you. It's like the commitment to brothers or men, and it's like showing that gratitude, like being in that room and not speaking, but you know, like, fuck, that touches me, or like that resonates with me. But he owns that space, man. He takes you in a deep like stuff with you, and it sounds like, I was like, mate, I'm not fucking staring in people's eyes and that, man. Like,
that's uncomfortable.
I'm staring in, it's uncomfortable.
You stare in each other's eyes.
So yeah, but what it does, it makes you question things, because he asks you a specific question.
You staring in his eyes, you got like a partner.
25 men. You just
this is like the gay Gordons at school.
Aye, man. It's like you match up with somebody, but it's like 2 minutes of staring in somebody's eyes. So then you're thinking, what are they thinking? Or I'm no backing down, because you're a man, aren't you? So you're obviously thinking, like, I'm not backing down here. I'm fucking looking in his eyes, staring dead in his eyes, like.
Or I'm not flinching.
I'm not flinching. He's weak. You know, it's like the.
Am I making him awkward? Does he make me awkward? And am I like
really awkward? It's comfy as fuck. But then, like, you grow out with that. You grow out with that comfortable situation. And he asks specific questions, which I can't really remember them, but like it'll be something like
father questions and
ask your partner, like, where does he lack integrity? So then I got that question, where do you lack integrity? And I'm fucking sitting looking in this guy's eyes for 2 minutes, and it's all going through my head, like, where do I lack integrity? And that's like one of the things.
What did you think when I booked this course?
Fuck me, man. But that's when I thought, like, when I was taking all these shit decisions, the easy ones,
and does that come to you?
Yeah,
you know, is it
all that came to me, man, right? And it all came like that whole weekend, it was like Friday till Sunday night.
Mhm.
So it was a long weekend, but it was like an intense weekend. These things were like, I grew a lot out of that because part of the coming into this space and working with Reece was that I had wanted to do this for a long time, but I didn't fucking do it because I was worried about what others thought.
Mhm.
But I never knew, but I'd felt that this was my purpose, to help people through breath work and cold water and help people with my experience in life. But I never did it because like construction was my life and I can't be seen to be doing this. I found that out on that weekend. And then I did the breath work that weekend, and that was like, that was an awakening. Like all the emotions from 20 years gone, released, just like that. I felt amazing.
I mean, even I was just having a look through the brief that you sent over, and it was last night. I was looking through it, and I printed it off, and I was just, I'm trying to when you want to have a balanced idea of something. Generally, it's if I find something I want to invest in, usually it's logically driven, but you need to be aware that you might have some bias. You might love the idea, you might like the people, you might like the concept.
Yeah.
You don't want that to cloud your
it can cloud your judgment. And the best way to handle that is to argue both sides of it. So why is it a bad deal? Why should you not buy it? Why should you not go near it?
Yeah.
What am I missing?
Yeah.
So you're arguing both sides. And I was trying to think of what would be both sides of this. And I thought, well, it's too woo-woo, it's too fluffy. It's for some people, not everybody. There's a lot of people that just goes, look, I like it, and I'm in. I'm looking to argue both sides of it. So skeptical, reductionist sort of mindset, this type of thing. And I came to the conclusion, because you come to a conclusion where you go, is it the right thing to do or not? And I thought to myself, if I put my shoes in a reductionist sort of mindset, we're just meat suits. You're born, you work, you retire, you die. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. I thought, well, generally these people have got something that lingers, something that is there, something that they probably haven't dealt with, something even for the most skeptical, they could probably go along and it would do them good just to shed that. Just like you said, that I let it go. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how reductionist are, you're holding on to something and just let it go. Wouldn't that be, even just for that, worth the time? Wouldn't it just be worth that? Hey, you got something in there, let it go. You don't need to feel for your heart. You don't need to. You don't need to see the light spectrum. You don't need to get any gamma brain waves. You don't need to understand that you're a generator of your energy or your results, or your focus or your attention.
I suppose the benefits.
Even just to let go and then see where else it goes.
That's it.
See where you end up.
And that's ideally that's where we're trying to get to, because I says to him is like, what I always learned was like, even when I went to Thailand and I fucked off there, and obviously I started getting like this feeling of like, I don't fit in here either, man. Like, I get it, like some people look at me and they'll say, oh, he's heavily tattooed and he's got this certain image, or and then I just love that, because that's their infliction of how you look, right? But they didn't actually take the time to go beyond that. And I will not open my story up to everybody, but if somebody takes the time and asks me questions like that, we Israeli dude, man, we clicked like that because he was just like poking my mind, man. Like, he wanted to know everything, and he was like, and when he was like, dude, I never thought that about you. Like, the fact that you even done breath work, you do not look like someone does that. And I went, well, define somebody that does breath work, mate. Like, define that for me. Like, if I had to be a fucking guru with like a man bun, wear all white and play a fucking drum, is that a breathwork instructor?
Mm-hmm.
Or can I give my story to whatever I lacked in life and what my journey was? So someone always told me, and I've heard it a couple of times, the wounded warrior, that's my purpose in life. And I never knew what it was. And you can look at archetypes. This is when people go into more of like the science or like the spiritual side of it. And I try not to go too deep into it, but I looked into it and I was like, makes fucking sense. Like, I had to go through all those moments in my life, to watching my mum get beat up, to the drugs, to the alcohol, to losing my mind, to the breakup, to fucking everything. Because if I'm going into this purpose of work, I need to meet every single person at that door, and I can meet their integrity and feel so empathic to what they're feeling, because every one of them has probably went through similar things in their life. And how can I resonate and hold that space for somebody if I've never been through that? I can't. I can try and pretend I can, but there's no danger you can meet somebody on that same level unless I've been through every single one of them. And then even now, that's where I look at it as like where I'm living with Paul. That dude I met a year ago, I'm living in his fucking house in Stirling. Random guy I meet under the trees. He comes to my breathwork. I come back from Thailand. He's like, dude, come and stay at my bit while you're over. I come back for the men's work. David flies me over, blah, 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 do my event. I stay at Paul's for a couple of weeks. It's only meant to be a couple of weeks, and here I am 3 months later, pretty much adopted into this fucking family I didn't even know. Family of 4 kids. Like, but what I'm being shown now is what I didn't get when I was a kid. And I've done the fucking work. And now the last piece of the puzzle for me is unconditional love. How to truly receive love. I ran in relationships from that, man. And the reason I ran for that is what I seen my mum go through growing up. And I didn't want to speak about her like that on like fucking camera or whatever. But I grew up listening to my mum fucking sleeping with men, mate. Every single weekend, every month, different men. Who the fuck's this guy? I'm just this young dude. Who the fuck are you? Drinking, partying, having to pull fucking men out the house, watching men spit in her face, treating her like shit. Because my mum had such low self-esteem, but what she's been through also, I know now what she's been through, why she does that. It's her way of escaping, because she's too weak to actually do the work. But equally, I went through that, and the way I treated women, I had no respect for women growing up. But what I did do is I can find a mother role in a woman because it felt good to me, because I didn't get it when I was growing up. And only now, I only realised that maybe about a year ago when I met that witchy lassie. She fucking gave me the deepest love you'll ever meet, the same as the one before my relationship, where it felt like a fairy tale. Almost the same story, open like that, but like a fucking truly, fully loving woman to somebody who's just come out of a broken marriage. And it's like, you've been shown the two hands, and I ran away for the one that gave me love. But then I still like wanted to go back to the one that didn't give me that love. And it was like, what am I used to? I'm used to like receiving no love. And what I want to give back to people is what I lacked. That's how I've got that big heart to give that out to people. But now what I'm being shown is being in that family and receiving unconditional love. Even his youngest son, Finn, I clicked like that on day one. Stranger walking into the house. Who the fuck's this guy? He runs up to me and he's like, gives me this cuddle. And I was like, that feels weird. It's like, it felt like a remembrance to me. The fucking turns out the dude's got the exact same birthday as me. February the 13th. And like, me and him are like that, man. Like, he's the weirdest thing ever. I've met him for 3 months, and he's like, he's the person I look happiest to coming home every single day, and it's not even my kid. And how the fuck can that spark in someone? But he's shown me unconditional love. He doesn't know me. He's not judging me. He's not looking at me at external environment. But the amount of joy that he brings to me, and he makes me feel that, but I didn't run from it. So I'm being shown that and what a family's like. Because eventually I do want to have that. I want to have the family. I want to have that. But I was never ready way before that. I was shown lessons. Because if I had kids 2 years ago, that wasn't the time, man. There's a bigger purpose for me, and that's what mine's is. I believe when I can fully receive that purpose of meeting people on that level and giving unconditional love out, I always think that's the end goal for most people. How many people can receive it but didn't give it? How many people can actually give it but then they didn't actually receive it? So we're always in this battle, right? There's never somebody that can give both. But I want to be able to accept that last part, and that's what I think is like, if you can really, I'm into that place of just trusting now. Like, I didn't tell myself, trust myself. Some days I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck is life? Like, I'm in this dude's fucking house, 6-bedroom house in Stirling, this random castle. Met someone in Breathwork, I've got a business with him, and then I wake up and I'm like, this feels fucking weird to me, but like, I'm just going with it, man. Like, let's roll with it. Let's see what happens. And it takes you on this fucking journey, man. And it's like, that's where I really think where we need to go back to is like, can you accept that and go for the journey? And I think there's a bit of scarcity around that with people, right? It feels scary, control. You want to hold.
Out the norm.
That is, man, and it blows some people's minds. But I'm now at the place where I look at life and I'm like, man, what's the fucking point of putting any boundaries on it, man? Like, your body will only go as far as your mind allows it, right? And if I put a cap on that, that's the only far as I'll ever go. But if I can fully trust and just trust that the universe always wants good for you, it never wants bad. But it'll feel like your fucking life's a wreck at that time because we're living in this conditioned life where we're doing the same shit every day. But we'll never see beyond the bigger picture because we're just comfy in that life. But what it'll do is it'll turn your life upside down, shake it, take everything from you, And then it'll be like, right, dude, you've got a fucking pathway. You can go back down there and learn the same lessons, or we can put you on this new pathway. It's scary as fuck because you've got a form of control over that and you do not know what's around the other corner. But if you just trust me, I swear it is better. And it is. It does get better, man. And I'm at that place where, like, fucking life's so simple. I get up and I jump in a fucking ice bath with Paul every morning. Me and him, we're like, we travel around. That's what we're like. Fist bumped him in the van earlier. We're like, dude, we're going to fucking Prague, like, next month. Like, did I ever think I'd leave school, then live in a random dude's house with this family, then be travelling the world and doing something that I fucking love that feels like an actual purpose? And then when I look back at what my younger purpose was, didn't know if I was going to be like a football player, but I wanted to leave a legacy behind, right? There was something in me that I didn't know what was then, but I now know that's what I want to leave behind. That book, that journey that I've been through, so people can follow that same pathway and just believe in themselves. So it's like, I think we need more of that, role models like that. None of this fucking fake bullshit on Instagram. This fake shit, man. It's killing people.
So see, for the people out there that are, this hits a spot for them, they're going, yes, this is what I need. Or even for them that go, I'm not really sure about it, but I'm going to give it a try. When's your next one?
Our next one, I think it's actually full at the end of the month. Fortunately, we've got, it's full, mate. So our next one, we go to Prague at the start of September.
16th September
16th.
and 17th of September.
Yeah, we've got one with Ben at Four
Pillars
Pillars in
Studio.
Glasgow.
He's Glasgow based.
Plenty, there's still some decent spaces on that, but it sold out the last time.
And we're regular in Eden Springs and Ladybank, just north of Dundee. That's south of Dundee.
So we sold a bi-weekly event?
Yeah. So the bi-weekly event is basically an introduction to breathwork and ice. There's one in Dundee every second Tuesday. So tomorrow, which is the 15th, then 2 weeks later, and then it's every second Wednesday in Stirling. So again, it's just an hour and a half session. Just it's not expensive for people to come along. It's 25 quid per person. Come along, just get like an introduction into ice baths and an introduction to a light breathwork session. Just allows them to experience something, because we're finding that, you know, the other journeys, the bi-weekly weekend events, people are unsure. They maybe don't want to spend their 75 quid each, so they maybe don't want to spend 75 the first time. It's completely unbeknown to them. So the little sessions give them a wee taster, then they can decide themselves if they can come to another one. As I say, Eden Springs in Ladybank, just south of Dundee, and then Bridge of Allen, Stirling is one.
Wallace Monument. But equally, I want to say there, anybody who is listening and they maybe do feel that wee bit of spark or like something from each of our stories, is maybe can't afford that either, because there was times in my life I probably couldn't afford shit. And I never want anybody to feel like that financial burden that they can't come and experience that. So I want to encourage anybody who does feel financially like stuck, but maybe wants to experience it, like to reach out to us, and we'll gift a free space. Because for us, that people do need to experience that, and people do deserve that as well, and they maybe just can't afford it at that time. So
and it could
if
be
there is
that
anybody
it could be that event that breaks the cycle for them.
And how do people keep abreast of what you're doing? How do they keep in touch with you?
All social media is at Oxygen Experience, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All the details are on their Linktree, so if they want to message through Instagram or Facebook.
YouTube as well.
YouTube channels up and running, but
going to start a free channel, education, free sessions for people that can't maybe afford things, and we're going to give it like raw, authentic education, cut out the bullshit in the middle, and just get people results from free stuff. That whole aspect of what I says is, what's the biggest thing that people do is giving back, right? And I feel like now I'd love to give back to people as well. I'm not in a financially stable place, like where I feel like, that part, but I can give out my knowledge and some of the wisdom that I've learned on the way, and if we can give that back on YouTube and it helps one person, then that one person can create a ripple effect. So we would love people
also collaborate as well. So that's why we're in different areas. So we'll look to collaborate in different cities. So we've been in Glasgow, we want to try, different collaborations in different cities. We'll tie up with yoga instructors or other breathwork, or like Ben at Four Pillars, he's a gym, and we collaborated with him last month. That was successful. So we're collaborating again with him. So we're happy to collaborate and come and work together, because it is an industry that's it's kind of in its infancy. So we want to collaborate, grow, get out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think equally on that part as well is some people they maybe want to dip their toe in breathwork as well, or it maybe comes something that we're working on a bigger agenda in terms of we're going to be creating a franchise model. And I hate that word franchise because I don't really want to look at, you got to look at an element of business, right? But equally, I want to take that element of like structured business and take it away. We want people that can go through the journey, it's done the work, and it resonates deeply with them. It like they almost want to give back that passion that we've got as well to give back to people. But there will be a franchise model that we're working like on behind in the backgrounds where we can almost drop that business model for people with the 9D headphones. I'm going to create a monthly soundscape every single month. So it's a new soundscape, and you'll get the headphones, you'll get our branding, you'll get everything. That's going to become like the franchise model. So anybody who is kind of maybe looking to that field of line is something that we're working big on behind the scenes as well. So we want to reach like Manchester's, London's, like kind of all over the UK, and then if we can be successful with that, then take on a global scale, because I think what we're providing is something different to, there is other people that are kind of doing maybe 9D stuff as well, but I believe that what we're giving behind it is, they're just, people always say it's just something that you do, and I always believe that comes from like in terms of what we're taking the music to, that level, and then just the way we're showing up for the people in every session. It's like there's not every person that can do that, I don't think. People can look at it and go, I can make those numbers in a business, but can you give that from your heart? And that's, so the franchise model will only be to a certain person to a degree where we feel that it's really passionate to them as well, and not just for a money sake of it. So yeah,
big plans. Well,
yeah.
Gentlemen, it's been great having you on and hearing your stories, hearing how you cross paths, the highs, the lows, the booms, busts, and everything in between. And you ended up on a beach in the torrential rain, going into the freezing cold water with your daughter, to roller coaster ride through the scheme life all the way through to drug fueled paranoia, and all the way out the other side, and getting all the way into breathwork. It's been some story. Thanks for coming on. It's been great to have you on and hear how you came about. And I think you're at the first wave of a big change. I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for this, and I have no doubt in my mind that what they'll hear today is going to ring true to them. So once you get back from Prague, you might need to get a few more dates lined up.
Yeah, there's plenty of dates.
Thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to come down and tell us a bit more about it. And I think it covers a lot of bases. So definitely great to see what you're doing, and find a bit more about what brought you to get here and what your plans are for the future.
And then obviously a shout out in return to you, man. Obviously without you bringing us here, obviously we didn't actually get to put our word out what we're actually doing. So big respect to having us on this podcast. Amazing setup. I didn't even expect it to be like this. So big shout out to that, man. It's like
shout out to Bulletproof Studio for having such a good setup.
So anybody doing a podcast or maybe wants to jump on, I invite them maybe to reach out, and it's an awesome space. Maybe love to be back on further down the line and see where we're at in that journey, or maybe we need to shout out about
we'll definitely reconvene after I've had a go at your
we can maybe touch back
maybe see what happened. We'll do like an after event. I've yet to levitate off the floor. We'll see how far I get.
Maybe we'll interview you then.
We'll give you.
We'll put the shoe in the other foot, see where it ends up.
How did it turn out?
We'll definitely need to do it after the event. Count me in. I'm up for that.
Awesome, man.
And if yous out there want to hear about my tales, get in touch. We'll put all the handles for the guys' channels in the show notes. It's been an absolute pleasure to have them on. The guys at the Oxygen Experience were kind enough to come down, and some of yous out there will love it. Some of yous might not so much. But I urge you to go along and give it a try. Certainly from my experience, I've touched up on a few of the things that the guys have spoken to on a very simplistic level. It's great to hear what they're bringing to the table, and I urge you to go along and have a look. Add them on social media, follow them, see how it goes, and we'll look forward to the second instalment where I tell you about my experience. So from this week on Conversations with an Investor, that's all from us. And you can follow me on all the social media channels, Conversations with an Investor. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And until next week, that's all.